Naruto, the Fuinjutsu professor of the Ninja Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. It's decided to do. Mito's mind moved, and the way he controlled the chains began to change dramatically. From the beginning, it suddenly became delicate and cunning. It no longer clashed head-on with Xia Yan's tentacles, but cleverly bypassed the ends of the tentacles and flew towards the roots of the tentacles. Like a whip, the closer Xia Yan's tentacles were to the roots, the slower they were. So when one of Mito's chains broke through the interception of the end of the tentacles, it easily hit the part of the tentacle near the root. Bang! Bang 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 bang! After the shadow clone of the arm that was hit exploded, the shadow clones of the arms at the front of the entire tentacle also exploded like dominoes. So in an instant, a large section of Xia Yan's tentacles immediately turned into a string of white smoke and disappeared into the air. As expected. Mito showed a slightly smug smile. These shadow clones of Xia Yan's arms are connected to his body through meridians, so they can continue to exist. So as long as the part close to the root is broken, a chain reaction can be triggered, and the entire tentacle can be disabled at once. This doesn't sound like a big deal. After all, creatures in reality are very similar. However, under the characteristics of the shadow clone's extremely poor ability to resist attacks, this shortcoming is infinitely magnified and becomes quite fatal. So don't think that Xia Yan's tentacles are comparable to the King Kong blockade, but in fact they are just a show and can be easily cracked by masters. After successfully making Xia Yan suffer a setback, Mito felt much better this time. However, she did not stop the offensive, but continued to press step by step. Because unknowingly, her expectations for Xia Yan have been raised to the level of Tabrama. So she was very curious whether Xia Yan could give her more surprises in this predicament. A moment later, in the courtyard of the Senju mansion, the battle was still going on, and it was still a scene of tentacles and chains flying together. It's just that it's easy to see that the tentacles are at a clear disadvantage at this time. Although Xia Yan quickly grew a tentacle on his back to replenish it and did not suffer a loss in numbers, he was still powerless to fight back in front of Mito, who had completely changed his tactics, and could only defend himself with all his might. There was no way. Compared with Mito's thick and hard-shaped chains, his tentacles were like fragile items, and they did not have an advantage. In addition, in terms of controlling tentacles and chains, Xia Yan was no match for Mito, who had been immersed in this for many years. Under Mito's control, the four chains were like living things, constantly trying to break through, directly attacking the roots of the tentacles, and even Xia Yan. In order to deal with this situation, Xia Yan's tentacles had already shrunk near his body, and he did not dare to expose any parts other than the ends in front of Mito's chains. It really deserves to be called Mito's teacher. It seems that there is still a lot of strength left, but it has made my flower branch mode completely helpless. Xia Yan, who was controlling the tentacles to continuously intercept the chain attacks, could not help but sigh in his heart. However, he was not in a hurry. After all, as a patient with paranoia, how could he not notice the weakness of his technique? So not long ago, he had developed a technique to make up for the defects of the flower branch mode. It's just that in order to maximize the effect of that move, he is still waiting for the best time. Fortunately, not long after, he waited for an opportunity. Mito used 3 chains as bait to let the 4th chain break through the interception of Xia Yan's tentacles again, and once again shot at the root of a tentacle with 1,000-pound force. It's over. Seeing that Xia Yan really seemed to have no backup, Mito couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. But it's true. The development and perfection of each ninjutsu requires a long period of accumulation and trial. Even Tobirama couldn't develop ninjutsu overnight. Even when he died, he left behind a bunch of imperfect forbidden techniques, but a series of water escape ninjutsu is already very perfect. So Mito soon smiled with relief. It seems that since Kushina went to the ninja school as an assistant, Xia Yan has been constantly giving her all kinds of surprises, which has raised her expectations of Xia Yan too high. However, at the moment when Mito had this thought in her mind, her sight accidentally caught a trace of Xia Yan's mouth corners that seemed to have succeeded in a treacherous plan. She couldn't help but be startled, and hurriedly looked in the direction of the chain. Then Mito was shocked to see that although the chain hit a section of the arm shadow clone exactly, Xia Yan's tentacle did not disappear. What's going on? Mito looked carefully and found that the section of the tentacle that was hit was different. It was rock, and there was an extra layer of rock on the arm shadow clone. And the volume of the rock layer was still expanding, and the entire arm was completely covered by the rock. Is this the fist rock technique of the hidden rock village? Mito quickly determined the ninjutsu used by Xia Yan. After all, this fist rock technique has both offensive and defensive capabilities, and is very practical, so it can be said to be a ninjutsu that must be learned by the hidden rock village ninja. Mito, who had dealt with them a lot before, was naturally familiar with this. She even knew that the ninja uniforms of the hidden rock village would deliberately remove the sleeves on the right hand, so that it would be more convenient to use this ninjutsu. It is said that if this technique is practiced to a deep level, it can directly turn the arm into rock, further improving the ability of attack and defense. At the same time, since there are many people in the hidden rock village who know this technique, it has been leaked a long time ago and spread in the ninja world, so it is not surprising that Xia Yan knows this ninjutsu. And Mito finally understood the method Xia Yan used to make up for the defects of the flower clone technique. That is to directly use rocks to add a layer of shell to the shadow clone of the arm. It is simple and crude enough. And Xia Yan's method seems to have not ended yet. Mito was surprised to find that not only that arm, but also all parts of all 4 tentacles began to emerge with layers of rocks. Then the rock layers began to spread and connect together rapidly. Soon, the arms could no longer be seen in their original sections. Instead, they became one whole, as if they were a creature made of rock, 100 flowers in disarray, rock snake. Taking advantage of the gap when Mito's attack just missed, the 4 tentacles covered with rock shells began to counterattack. Although the speed and flexibility of the tentacles were greatly reduced due to the sudden increase in weight, Xia Yan still made up for the disadvantage in one go, relying on his thick skin and flesh, and even had a slight advantage. However, this was not the complete form of this technique. Taking advantage of the gap when one of Mito's chains was knocked away, 4 rock snakes flew towards Mito at the same time. Then Xia Yan put his hands together again, and the 4 rock snakes quickly moved closer while continuing to move forward, and then twisted together like twisting a dough twist, and crashed into Mito with a thunderous force. It's decided to do. Anya. As soon as Xia Yan finished speaking, Mito saw that at the end of the menacing rock tentacle, not only a sharp horn grew, but also 2 vivid eyes. It's the projection technique. No, those are eyes created by the flower clone technique. They are used to provide vision for easy control. Although a hideous giant rock snake was attacking her, Mito didn't seem to be worried at all, and even had the mind to study whether the eyes on it were decorations. After understanding Xia Yan's thinking in an instant, Mito finally showed a satisfied smile and praised. Xia Yan, you always bring me surprises. After that, another chain burst out from her back, instantly smashing the entire Anya. Xia Yan. Meow meow meow. Chapter 152 Countdown. Boom boom boom. With a roar, a huge rock snake wreckage broke into countless pieces and fell to the ground. For a moment, the courtyard was filled with dust and rubble. Xia Yan casually unfolded a barrier to block the rubble flying towards him, but there was still a lot of disbelief on his face. Because he didn't expect that the big rock snake he created with a lot of chakra would be so vulnerable in front of Mito's final diamond seal. Is the diamond seal of the Uzumaki clan a monster? However, Xia Yan temporarily suppressed his surprise. After all, the battle was not over yet. He looked around vigilantly, guarding against the chains that might attack him at any time from the dust. However, Xia Yan waited for a moment, but still did not wait for Mito's attack. Could it be that the old lady had had enough fun and decided not to fight? Xia Yan couldn't help but have such a guess in his heart. However, the dust soon settled, and when Xia Yan regained his vision, he saw the picture of Mito teacher supporting the ground with one hand, with a painful expression on his face. What was even more terrifying was that a stream of red chakra with an ominous aura was constantly emanating from her body. Teacher. Xia Yan quickly stepped forward, but soon stopped again because of Mito's raised palm. He could only stand at a distance and observe the situation, and he was a little worried that teacher Mito might have gone too far. After all, her current situation was obviously caused by the leakage of the 9-tailed chakra in her body. Fortunately, it didn't take long for Mito to suppress the 9-tailed chakra that was scattered in her body back into her body, and her expression was much more relaxed. Xia Yan wanted to step forward again, but was stopped by Mito again. Wait a moment, I have to say a few words to my old friend first. After saying that, Mito closed her eyes, and then a violent 9-tailed chakra fluctuation broke out from her body again, but this time it was immediately suppressed by Mito. Repeatedly, the nine-tailed chakra fluctuations in Mito's body became weaker and weaker, and finally there was a sudden strong burst, and then it completely subsided. Then Mito slowly opened her eyes and exhaled a long breath. Seeing this, Xia Yan couldn't help but imagine the scene of the nine-tails being hung up and beaten by Mito in the sealed space. At the same time, he hurriedly walked forward and helped Mito to rest on a stone bench nearby. Alas, I'm still old. Mito took a sip of the tea that Xia Yan conjured, then sighed. I didn't expect that just by calling a little more chakra, the nine-tailed guy found an opportunity to resist. Xia Yan, who was standing aside, couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he heard Mito's words. If the Jinchuriki does not reach a reconciliation with the tailed beast, then from the day that tailed beast is sealed in his body, he will have to engage in an endless tug-of-war with the tailed beast. If he can gain the upper hand with his own powerful chakra and the help of the sealing technique, then the Jinchuriki can plunder the chakra of the tailed beast for his own use and gain powerful power. But if the Jinchuriki is at a disadvantage in this tug-of-war, he may be swallowed by the tailed beast at any time. Mito has a huge amount of chakra and is proficient in sealing techniques, so even when facing the strongest tailed beast, the nine-tailed demon fox, she has always been in a dominant position and has not given the opponent any chance. However, judging from the situation just now, her suppression of the nine-tailed fox has obviously weakened a lot. In order to guard against the nine-tailed fox's counterattack, Mito may not be able to fight with all her strength, for the Jinchuriki who exists as a deterrent. This is a very dangerous signal. It seems that Xia Yan, you also know what that means. Mito looked at Xia Yan's worried look and smiled with some regret. I thought I could buy more time for Kushina, but from the situation just now, I probably can't hold on for much longer. 1 year. No, there are probably only a few months left. In order to have enough energy to make the sealing ceremony go smoothly, I must entrust the burden of the nine-tailed Jinchuriki to Kushina. Xia Yan's heart became heavier when he heard this. In fact, with the physique of Mito's Uzumaki clan, it would not be strange even if she lived to be hundreds of years old. However, her status as a Jinchuriki forced her to wend her life before she could suppress the nine-tails, although Xia Yan had anticipated this, and even thought about how to use the nine-tails in Kushina's body in the future. However, when Xia Yan really found that this day was come in, he was not happy at all. Although he didn't spend much time with Mr. Mito, he still sincerely respected his teacher who was knowledgeable, humorous, and dedicated his life to Konoha. So when Xia Yan thought that he would never see him again in a few months, he was still very reluctant. In addition, the malicious chakra fluctuations of the nine-tails just now also make Xia Yan realize a fact. The nine-tails now is not the harmless big orange in the future, but the nine-tailed demon fox that still holds a grudge against humans. Is letting this thing be sealed in Kushina's body really the best choice for her? Xia Yan couldn't help but hesitate. So he couldn't help but ask Mito. Teacher, can Kyuubi hear our conversation now? Mito said. I have locked it in a small dark room for reflection, so it can't hear anything for the time being. Xia Yan mourned for Kyuubi in his heart for a second, and at the same time felt that his next question seemed to have no meaning. He asked. Teacher Mito, have you ever thought about the possibility of living in harmony with Kyuubi? Mito raised his eyebrows slightly, and then smiled. If you, Xia Yan, were beaten up for no reason and locked up for decades, would you be willing to get along well with the guy who locked you up? Xia Yan was speechless. Mito added. In fact, some Jinchuriki have similar ideas to you, but no Jinchuriki has been able to do this so far. After all, the tailed beasts, which were originally free, were forcibly locked up in a narrow cage. Naturally, they hated the container that imprisoned them from the bottom of their hearts. I'm afraid it will take generations of efforts for the Jinchuriki to reconcile with the tailed beasts one day. Xia Yan couldn't help but complain in his heart when he heard this. No, they surprisingly let go of hatred very easily. For example, Killer being Kumogaku will probably become a perfect Jinchuriki in no time. However, he also understood what Mito meant. At least as the first generation of Jinchuriki who directly deprived the tailed beasts of their freedom, they would definitely not be able to get along well with the tailed beasts. Not to mention that the one in Mito's body is the nine-tailed demon fox, which has the ability to perceive malice and has never hesitated to speculate the worst of Konoha people with malice. Perhaps only Naruto, who was raised by the nine-tails since childhood, could so easily untie the nine-tails knot. Chapter 153 In Seal. Xia Yan had no good idea at the moment, so he had to put the matter aside for the time being. After that, Mito changed the topic to a lighter one, and began to fulfill his responsibility as a teacher, reviewing their previous battle. By the way, Xia Yan, the technique you just performed was really interesting. Speaking of the big army that Xia Yan created at the end, Mito showed an approving smile on his face. You actually thought of combining the flower clone technique with the rock fist technique of Iwagaku to make up for the weakness of the arm shadow clone being too fragile, while also greatly enhancing the destructive power. And in addition to Earth Escape, other escape techniques should also be able to be used in conjunction with the flower clone technique to achieve different effects. It can be said that this is a ninjutsu of infinite possibilities. Xia Yan heard Mito's praise, but there was not much joy on his face. Instead, he smiled helplessly and said, "But it was still easily broken by your chain, teacher." Mito smiled and said, "There's nothing we can do about it. Xia Yan, you may not know that in battles above the level of Junin, the amount of chakra is often the key to determining victory or defeat. Although your technique looks scary, the amount of chakra it contains is just ordinary. Naturally, it cannot defeat my chain that has condensed a lot of chakra in terms of strength." Mito sighed as he spoke. It's indeed a bit unfair to say this. After all, the amount of chakra is actually determined when a person is born. Xia Yan, although you have increased the capacity of your meridians through the training method of the foundation building plan, you still cannot increase the upper limit of the amount of chakra. And Xia Yan, your rock snake and my chain are both ninjutsu that change their power according to the amount of chakra injected, so your rock snake is certainly not a match for my chain. After laying the groundwork, Mito went to the real topic of today. This is also the reason why she took the initiative to spar with Xia Yan and deliberately used all her strength to defeat Xia Yan in the end. She said with a smile, "Fortunately, you are my disciple, so there is a way to make up for this shortcoming." Although Mito deliberately paused to create suspense, Xia Yan had roughly guessed what Mito wanted to say. Sure enough, Mito then said mysteriously, "Xia Yan, have you heard of the Yin-seal?" Xia Yan, who has read the original work, naturally knows what the Yin-seal is. He even knows that Summoned will use this technique as a basis to develop an S-level medical ninjutsu, the 100 healings technique in the future. However, he naturally did not say anything because he could not explain the source of the information, but just listened quietly to Mito's next introduction. Just like what Xia Yan remembered, Yin-seal is to seal the surplus chakra on the forehead at ordinary times, and finally form a diamond-shaped mark. Then, when needed, you can use Yin-seal release to unlock the seal, so as to temporarily obtain a large amount of chakra. After Mito introduced Yin-seal, he smiled and said, "So as long as you, Xia Yan, master Yin-seal, you don't have to worry about insufficient chakra at critical moments. Although this technique is very difficult to learn, and you also need to master a lot of medical ninjutsu knowledge, I believe that you will be able to learn it sooner or later." Xia Yan also nodded slowly and said, "It sounds like this technique is indeed very suitable for me. After all, if you use Xia Yan's previous life to understand, this Yin-seal is actually a power bank. And it is a low-quality power bank that takes several months to charge and only takes 5 minutes to use. However, for Xia Yan, who does not fight frequently, this is a very cost-effective ninjutsu, enough to make up for the shortcoming of Xia Yan's natural low chakra amount." So before he became Mito's disciple, he actually put Yin-seal in his future research plan. The only difference now is that it has changed from being completely self-developed to being able to learn directly from Mito. However, Xia Yan actually feels that this is not yet time to learn this technique. Because the Yin-seal requires the continuous injection of excess chakra into the forehead to form a mark, and Xia Yan's daily practice and research use up all the chakra, so where is the surplus chakra? So he originally wanted to wait until he developed the chakra conversion technology before he could do it all at once and convert other people's chakra into the Yin-seal, skipping the stage of slow accumulation. It seems that the chakra conversion technology must also be put on the research process. Xia Yan felt a little helpless. There were too many research projects. Even with the 3 little ones, he didn't have enough time. I don't know if Orokimura has developed a ninjutsu that can absorb chakra. Maybe this part can be outsourced to Orokimura. After a little hesitation, Xia Yan decided not to miss this opportunity to learn the Yin-seal. After all, this technique still requires learning a lot of medical ninjutsu knowledge, and it can't be accomplished overnight, so he estimated that it would take a long time before he officially entered the stage of storing chakra, and he didn't need to worry about the chakra problem for the time being. After making a decision in his heart, Xia Yan looked at Mito and said, "Teacher, please teach me the Yin-seal." "Of course there is no problem." Mito nodded slightly, and said with a little emotion, "After all, this is probably the only thing I can teach you as a teacher." After that, she added, It's just that I spend most of my time now on compiling new SEAL techniques textbooks, so most of the content of the SEAL still needs you to learn it by yourself. Of course. Xia Yan nodded to show his understanding. With his current level of SEAL techniques, he no longer needs a teacher to teach him step by step. Then Mito seemed to suddenly remember something, and clasped his hands together and said, "It just so happens that Kushina has recently started practicing the SEAL again, so Xia Yan, you can help me guide her practice by the way, which is considered to be a little responsibility as a senior brother." "Why is Kushina also learning the SEAL?" Xia Yan said with a little surprise. After all, in the original work, Kushina did not master the SEAL. Mito's expression froze slightly, and she felt that she could not tell the reason why Kushina learned the SEAL. However, Xia Yan didn't care too much. Because his arrival had changed a lot of things, and it was a good thing that Kushina was willing to learn the SEAL. So he promised to teach Kushina to learn the SEAL. At the same time, the fact that Mito might not live long also made Xia Yan feel a lot of urgency. So he began to consider that, in addition to the SEAL, the technique could also be taught to Kushina. After getting Xia Yan's clear answer, Mito also showed a satisfied smile, and silently said in his heart, "Kushina, I can only help you here." The next morning, Kushina went out early in the morning, and walked happily towards the street in the southeast corner of Konoha. Today she dressed up very beautifully, and even wore a red jinsum that she usually didn't want to wear. This was because she received a message from Xia Yan through the bracelet last night, asking her to go to his house tomorrow morning, saying that there was something important to tell her. "I don't know what the important thing is, could it be?" Kushina put her hands behind her back, and two blushes appeared on her face from time to time, obviously thinking of something strange. Soon, Kushina arrived at the door of Yushin's house. It was her first time to visit Xia Yan's house, and she was a little nervous. She looked at the bracelet, thought about it, and gave up the method of notifying Xia Yan with the bracelet, and chose to knock on the door directly. This was more ceremonial. Dong dong dong. After knocking on the door a few times, Kushina heard a light footstep coming from inside. She became more and more nervous, and couldn't help but check her dress again, and then restored her nonchalant look the moment the door opened. However, her nonchalant expression was soon broken, because she was surprised to see that it was not Xia Yan who opened the door, but a little boy with white curly hair and blue clothes. After a closer look, Kushina also found that the child looked very similar to Xia Yan. Could it be the child of Xia Yan's relatives? This idea naturally emerged in Kushina's mind. So she put on a smile, leaned over slightly, and asked in a gentle tone, "Hello, is Xia Yan at home?" The little boy rolled his eyes and said in a cute tone like Conan, "Ah, sister, what do you want to see my dad?" Chapter 154 Showdown. Dad. When Kushina heard the little boy's words, her smile froze instantly and her mind went blank. Only the word dad kept echoing in her mind. Why would this child call Xia Yan dad? Kushina, who finally came to her senses, thought about this question with difficulty. Oh, maybe this child was just joking. Taking a step back, maybe this child was just adopted by Xia Yan. Kushina kept looking for reasons to convince herself in her heart. However, the child in front of her had a signature white hair and looked exactly like Xia Yan, which ruthlessly shattered her fantasy. Obviously, there is only one explanation for this situation. Thinking of the scary possibility, Kushina was struck by lightning and stepped back a few steps. "Sister, are you okay?" Seeing this, the little boy hurriedly stepped forward with his short legs, and his raised little face was full of worry. "I'm fine," Kushina forced a smile, but her heart was bitter. At the same time, she couldn't help but look at the boy a few more times, Eastern Standard Time estimating his age. It looks like the child is about 3 or 4 years old, and Xia Yan is only 16 years old now. By this calculation, Xia Yan was not long after graduation. Kushina became more and more suspicious of life. Although she knew that the profession of ninja was precarious and most of them were very precocious, they were not precocious to this extent. Kushina felt that there must be something strange about this matter, and soon thought of the biggest key to this matter. So she temporarily suppressed her critical emotions towards Xia Yan, and asked the little boy in the softest tone possible. "Little boy, you said Xia Yan is your father, then where is your mother?" The little boy's eyes widened slightly when he heard it, and then he lowered his head a little sadly and said, "I haven't seen my mother since I was a child, and every time I ask my father about my mother, he gets very angry." Seeing the pitiful appearance of the little boy, Kushina's maternal instinct suddenly emerged, squatting down and touching his little head to comfort him softly. "I'm sorry, Sister, I didn't know. At the same time, she was thinking about something in her heart. It seems that Xia Yan and the child's mother have lost contact. Did they separate? Oh, Kushina felt very disappointed that she actually felt a little relieved. Kushina, what are you thinking about? Although you have a good impression of Xia Yan, he already has a child. Are you mentally prepared to become someone else's stepmother? Kushina was tangled in her heart. At this time, the little boy also sniffed and tried to make a strong expression and said, I'm fine, thank you sister. Seeing that the child was so well behaved and sensible, Kushina's eyes became softer. The little boy said again, by the way, sister, you just said you came to find Dad, right? But Dad is a little busy now, so sister, you should go into the house and wait for a while. As he said that, he took Kushina's hand familiarly and led her into the yard. Kushina also had countless questions to ask Xia Yan, so she didn't refuse the child's suggestion. So the two walked into the yard hand in hand, talking and laughing. At the same time, Kushina also remembered the content of Xia Yan's message yesterday. It was very important. Could it be that he was talking about this child? Thinking of Xia Yan's showdown, Kushina felt complicated again. After all, this might mean that Xia Yan actually had a good impression of her. If it was normal, Kushina would have jumped for joy. But the problem was still his child. However, the warmth from the boy's little hand still made Kushina feel a little palpitation inexplicably. It was as if she had known this child for a long time. If it was this child, perhaps, it was not completely unacceptable. Just when Kushina's attitude softened, the door of the house suddenly opened, and two figures who were exactly the same as the boy except for the color of their clothes walked out. Kushina was stunned again. Actually, they were triplets. At the same time, Xia Yan was still conducting research on the cursed seal in front of the prototype in the underground laboratory. He had already known the news that Kushina had come to his house from the system prompt. However, Xia Yan was not in a hurry. Instead, he finished the work at hand first, and then set the next task for the prototype. Finally, he left the laboratory and walked along the stairs to his home. Kushina and the three little things will be very surprised when they meet for the first time. Xia Yan murmured in his heart, and couldn't help but smile knowingly. He asked Kushina to come to his house today, naturally to fulfill his promise to teach Yumito and assist Kushina in practicing the in-seal. However, considering the difficulty of learning this technique and the fact that teacher Yumito is likely to die soon, Xia Yan finally made a major decision. That is, in order to speed up Kushina's growth, he decided to teach her the infant clone technique. Naturally, there is no need to keep the three little ones he transformed with the infant clone technique secret from Kushina. So he had already given them the task of welcoming Kushina this morning, and asked them to introduce themselves to Kushina, paving the way for him to teach Kushina the infant clone technique next. Not long after, Xia Yan came out of the basement of his home, just in time to see the three little ones leading Kushina into the house. It can be seen that there is still a lot of surprise on Kushina's face, and Xia Yan is also a little proud. After all, this infant clone technique is his masterpiece, so it is not surprising that Kushina is so surprised. Kushina, you came very early. Xia Yan walked over, raised his hand to say hello, and then said with a smile. Kushina, from the look of you, you should have known their situation, which saves me a lot of effort to explain. Kushina looked at Xia Yan with a complicated expression, and seeing his nonchalant look, she felt mixed emotions. She hesitated again and again, but further confirmed. Xia Yan, you said you have something important to tell me, are you referring to them? Xia Yan smiled and said, yes, it's very surprising, isn't it? Kushina nodded with a heavy face. Then Xia Yan reminded her, I have kept this secret for a long time. Apart from me, only you, Kushina, know it, so remember not to tell anyone else. Although she was quite dissatisfied with Xia Yan's concealment of this matter, after all, it was Xia Yan's privacy, so Kushina nodded seriously and said, don't worry, I won't tell anyone else. Xia Yan was relieved and said, very good. Then, let's get to the point. Here it comes. Xia Yan is really going to confront her. Kushina felt her heart pounding and her cheeks began to heat up. Moreover, she was still in a state of anxiety at this time, and had no idea what kind of answer she would give. Xia Yan's handsome face was covered with a faint smile, and he slowly walked to Kushina's side. He rubbed the head of the silent no. And whispered in Kushina's ear, Kushina. Kushina responded in a mosquito-like voice. Xia Yan said in a seductive tone, what do you think of them? Do you like them? How about, I make a few for you? Thank you Leo haha for the 100 reward. Chapter 155. The quintessential quintuplets. A series of snapping sounds rang out in Yushin's house. A moment later, in the study of Yushin's house, Kushina was sitting obediently on a chair, with her head buried low like a quail. From time to time, she secretly glanced at Xia Yan, who was applying medicine opposite her, feeling a little ashamed. Just now, she misunderstood Xia Yan's meaning, and she got angry and started fighting. Although Xia Yan quickly subdued her, she was still caught off guard and took a few punches from her. After Xia Yan's explanation, she realized that these three children were all shadow clones created by Xia Yan. No wonder they looked so much like Xia Yan. Knowing that she had made a big mistake, Kushina was naturally ashamed and really wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. No, that's not right. Only then did she remember that there was another culprit, so she looked indignantly at the three little ones who were working at the small desk in the corner. After knowing that they were Xia Yan's shadow clones, Kushina was no longer shy. She walked over angrily and pointed at No. 2, who was wearing blue clothes, and said, "Damn it, you actually fooled me. Why does Xia Yan have a shadow clone with a bad personality like you?" No. 2 put down the pen and said to Kushina innocently, "Oh, sister, how did I lie to you?" Seeing that No. 2 was still pretending to be cute, Kushina got angry and said indignantly, "Then why do you call Xia Yan Dad?" No. 2 spread his hands and said, "This is an internal joke in our family. We often call the original body like this." No. 1 and No. 3 also nodded in agreement, indicating that they never get tired of playing this game. Kushina choked and said, "How do you explain the mother thing?" Number 2 said slowly, "I didn't lie about that part either. After all, I haven't seen my mother since I was born. And every time we wanted to discuss with the original body about finding a mother for us, he would get very angry." Kushina was speechless. No matter who it was, they would be very angry when their shadow clone urged them to get married. So number 2 made a closing statement again. "So you see, I didn't lie about what I said. It's just that you misunderstood, Sister Kushina, so you can't blame me." "You?" Kushina pointed at number 2 with a trembling finger, but couldn't find any words to refute for a long time. In the end, she could only snort, and walked back to sit down with a belly full of anger, drawing circles on the table and cursing number 2. At this time, Xia Yan also finished applying the medicine, and walked over to Kushina with a resentful look on his face and said, "It seems that there is no fracture, but Kushina, you just hit too hard." Kushina stuck out her tongue and made a face, and then her face turned slightly red. Who told you to say something that could be easily misunderstood just now?" Xia Yan cried out in injustice. "Please, it's obviously not me who is wrong, it's No. 2. Isn't it still you?" Kushina complained sharply. What she said made so much sense that Xia Yan couldn't refute it. This time, No. 2 was really rigged off. Xia Yan glared at No. 2 fiercely, then coughed twice and said, "Let's let the past be the past. Now Kushina, you should know why I asked you to come here today. Not only did I get the practice method of Yin Seal from Mito-sama, but I also took over the job of guiding you to practice Yin Seal. But before that, I have another technique to teach you." After the long incident just now, Kushina also roughly guessed Xia Yan's thoughts, and said with expectation, "Xia Yan, are you really willing to teach me such a magical ninjutsu?" As she said that, she looked at the three little ones who were working with some envy. Although she was deceived by them just now, she couldn't deny that these little guys were very interesting. Xia Yan smiled and said, "Sharpening the knife does not delay that chopping of wood. Mastering this technique will be very helpful for you to learn the Yin Seal in the future, and it can also reduce my workload. In fact, Kushina, you have helped me a lot in the past. This technique is my little gift." Xia Yan, seeing Xia Yan so generously imparting such a precious ninjutsu to her, Kushina couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. In order not to disappoint Xia Yan's kindness, Kushina said seriously, "Don't worry, Xia Yan, I will definitely learn it well." Unexpectedly, Xia Yan scratched his head and said, "I'm also very happy that you are so devoted, Kushina, but this technique does not actually need to be learned." As he said that, Xia Yan took out a storage card and put it on the table to unseal it in Kushina's confused eyes. Bang! After the white smoke dissipated, there were several half-red and half-white wooden balls on the table. Xia Yan picked up a wooden ball and kept throwing it, saying, "These are the props used to perform the infant clone technique. I call them sealing balls." So in fact, anyone who knows the shadow clone technique can use these sealing balls to perform the infant clone technique without learning. Due to time constraints, I have prepared the sealing balls for you. As for the method of making the sealing balls, we will talk about it later. Kushina nodded after hearing this, and then curiously picked up a sealing ball and examined it. Soon she found that this was not a simple wooden ball, but was made of many small wooden blocks, a bit like the Bagua lock that she had never solved when she was a child. There were also densely packed runes and spells engraved on it, which looked very complicated. Xia Yan continued to explain. This sealing ball has two main functions. First, as its name suggests, this small ball is actually a container that can seal chakra. It's just that I deliberately left a loophole in the sealing technique above. So as long as the chakra when the shadow clone disappears is sealed inside, then these chakras will slowly leak out over time. In this way, the return process of the shadow clone's chakra will be greatly prolonged, and the burden on the main body will naturally be greatly reduced. Through this method, we can truly use the shadow clone technique in practice and learning without worrying about causing adverse effects on ourselves. Kushina suddenly realized when she heard this, and couldn't help but sighed. It sounds quite simple, why hasn't anyone discovered it for so many years? No wonder Xia Yan, you have been making such rapid progress all the time, and you can also take care of school and tavern affairs at the same time. Xia Yan smiled and nodded. Kushina, you can do the same thing in the future, and with your physique, the effect will even be better than mine. Kushina nodded vigorously, feeling both moved and expectant. Xia Yan added. And the second function of these sealing balls is the interference array drawn on them, which can affect the operation of the shadow clone technique, allowing the caster to create a shadow clone with a body age of only 3 years old. The advantage of this function is that if the shadow clone is just used for learning and research, a lot of chakra can be saved. Combined with the first function of the sealing ball, you can create a shadow clone specialized for learning. And this is the infant clone technique I invented. Clap, 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 Kushina clapped her hands in support. Xia Yan smiled and said, then let's let you experience it for yourself. With your physique, let's start with 5 shadow clones. But with your chakra amount, Kushina, you shouldn't be able to use the second function. There's no need to shrink the shadow clones to save chakra. Just maintain the main body. Kushina was disappointed and said pitifully, Xia Yan, I also want a small version of myself. Look how cute they are. Xia Yan thought about it and said indifferently, it doesn't really matter. Kushina, as long as you like it, this function is built into the sealing ball. I just need to turn it on. Great. Kushina cheered. So Xia Yan fine-tuned the sealing balls one by one and turned on the function of shrinking the shadow clones. After that, things were simple. Kushina stood in the magic circle drawn by Xia Yan and performed the shadow clone technique. Then, the 5 sealing balls placed around the magic circle all banged and turned into 5 short red-haired little girls in the white smoke. Unfortunately, Kushina, who was looking forward to seeing herself at the age of 3, froze her smile again. Because what she saw were 5 chubby little girls who looked like the reincarnation of Michelin. At this moment, the dead memories began to attack Kushina. She finally vaguely remembered that she seemed to be a little chubby girl when she was 3 years old. Chapter 156 Backstab. Xia Yan, don't look over here. Kushina reacted quickly and let out a miserable cry. She never thought that she would accidentally expose her dark history to Xia Yan. In shame and anger, she rushed to Xia Yan without thinking, jumping and waving her hands, trying to block his sight. Unfortunately, her efforts were in vain. When Xia Yan couldn't help but point behind her, Kushina looked back and found that her chubby shadow clones had disappeared. At the same time, there was a messy sound of footsteps coming from the corridor outside the door. Hey, where are you running to? Kushina was almost crazy, and she screamed and chased after them. Only Xia Yan and the 3 little ones were left in the study, looking at each other, and then everyone spread their hands at the same time and shook their heads to express helplessness. Wow, this room has become so big all of a sudden. So this is the world we saw when we were kids, so magical. Ha, those little fat girls over there look so funny. No, that's a mirror. Outside the study, 5 little red-haired fat girls were running around curiously, exploring the surroundings from a child's perspective, and chirping with emotion. But Kushina soon ran out of the study, interrupting their discussion. You guys wait for me. The old woman has come in, everyone run. The 5 little Kushina let out a sharp giggle, then scattered and played hide-and-seek with their original bodies. Who are you calling old woman? You're obviously me. Kushina was so angry that her hair began to flutter, and she chased them viciously, deciding to make them smack their butts if she caught them later. She was so excited that she didn't expect that she was the unlucky one. Xia Yan, who was standing at the door of the study and watching, felt that Kushina seemed to be having a lot of fun. Playing hide and seek with the shadow clones was similar to playing cards with Naruto and the shadow clones. And Xia Yan was not just watching the show, he was also analyzing it. Judging from the performance of these shadow clones just now, they should have been affected by the shrinking of their bodies like Xia Yan's three little ones, causing psychological regression and becoming as irrational as children. The bug that caused the deviation of the shadow clone's personality was fixed by Xia Yan, who almost completely mastered the principle of the shadow clone technique. However, as an Easter egg, Xia Yan secretly left this loophole in one of the sealing balls. It can also be regarded as adding a little fun to Kushina's future interactions with the shadow clones. After all, although Xia Yan usually seemed to dislike the three little ones, he had never thought of doing so even if he could fix this bug. Because the three little ones, who represent his three sides of personality, can always bring various inspirations to Xia Yan from different angles. Without them, Xia Yan feels that his life will be much less colorful. At this moment, a little Kushina, who had been hiding quietly nearby from the beginning, came out from under a table. She pricked up her ears and listened. After confirming that the main body was not nearby through the sound, she tiptoed to Xia Yan. She raised her little face, stared at Xia Yan with her big eyes, and at the same time, two blushes floated on her chubby cheeks for no reason. This made Xia Yan couldn't help but think of the dolls in those New Year pictures, which looked particularly festive. "What's wrong, this cute little sister?" Xia Yan asked with a smile, but at the same time, he was resisting the urge to pinch her chubby cheeks. "I'm not a little sister." Little Kushina responded angrily, and then her expression became a little embarrassed. After she pulled at him at her clothes and struggled for a while, she waved to Xia Yan with determination and said in a baby voice, Xia Yan, I have a big secret to tell you." "Oh?" Xia Yan was also curious about what this little Kushina wanted to say, so he squatted down and put on a posture of listening attentively. Little Kushina looked around and saw that the original body had not come back yet. She took a deep breath and her eyes became more determined. Since the original body was dragging her feet and I don't know when to let Xia Yan know her feelings, I will show her my cards. Original body, I can only help you so far, Yoshi. Little Kushina secretly encouraged herself, put her little face close to Xia Yan's ear, and whispered, "Xia Yan, I tell you, actually the original body has always been, bang." Who knew that just when she said the key point, she suddenly turned into a ball of white smoke and disappeared. At the same time, a wooden ball fell to the ground and rolled to Xia Yan's feet. It was just like she came out of the starting point of the training class. Then, Kushina, holding 4 sealing balls in her arms, reappeared like a victorious general, and said smugly, "I'm so stupid, how could I forget that there is a way to remove the shadow clone? You still have 12 years to fight me." Xia Yan picked up the sealing ball with a strange expression and handed it to Kushina. Although the little Kushina hadn't finished speaking just now, Xia Yan already knew roughly what she wanted to say. This Kushina, obviously a shadow clone, was too proactive. Obviously, this one was the Easter egg that Xia Yan left for Kushina, a shadow clone with a shifted personality. But Xia Yan couldn't control the direction of the personality shift, so he was actually surprised by the behavior of this shadow clone. "I didn't expect it to be a carnivorous character. What kind of my shadow clone wants to confess for me is this? Ah, so the last one is here, thank you Xia Yan." Kushina freed her hands and took the sealing ball, not knowing that her shadow clone was about to confess to Xia Yan on her behalf. Because these sealing balls have been upgraded, they can automatically seal the chakra after the shadow clone disappears. So the memory has not returned to Kushina's mind with the chakra. At the same time, there are mechanisms on the sealing ball, which can choose the speed of releasing chakra and whether to release chakra. Xia Yan considered that Kushina had died several times today, and finally decided to end the test and let her release the chakra in the sealing ball after returning home. This can be regarded as Xia Yan's little care for Kushina. However, imagining Kushina's reaction after getting this memory, Xia Yan couldn't help but gloat at the corner of his mouth. After a moment, the two returned to the study again. Okay, the infant clone technique has also been tested, so let's get into the second topic of today. Xia Yan walked to the desk and took out a scroll and spread it on the table. Kushina took a closer look and quickly recognized that what was written on it was the secret sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan that she had recently relearned, the In-Seal. Chapter 157. 100 Heroes. Xia Yan got this technique from Mito yesterday and has read it over and over again. However, what surprised him was that the practice method of Yin Seal was incomplete. It was not that Mito was hiding something from him, but that Yin Seal was already incomplete. According to the records on the scroll, Yin Seal, as the secret passed down from generation to generation by the Uzumaki clan, has a very long history, and can even be traced back to the era of the Six Paths Sage. And unlike the simple chakra power bank that Xia Yan imagined, Yin Seal is based on stored chakra and actually has many wonderful uses in theory. It is a complete system of ninjutsu. However, like the development history of the rune system, the inheritance of Yin Seal has also experienced many twists and turns, and has been lost and broken several times. So now, the only two functions that are relatively complete on this scroll are storing chakra and stimulating body activity to keep young. The other functions are only a few words, and there is no system at all. At the same time, what Xia Yan is a little concerned about is that the word 100 heroes appeared many times in the text records on the scroll. This actually refers to the person who has fully mastered the Yin Seal, who can have the same amount of chakra and combat power as 100 heroes. I guess even the hero Jiraiya would find it very cool. In the early days, the Yin Seal system was actually called the 100 Healings technique. The diamond-shaped mark formed by the Yin Seal is also called the 100 Healing Seal. However, this technique has been lost and almost only has the function of sealing and storing chakra, and it can no longer bear the name of 100 Healings, so it is rarely called this. When Xia Yan saw this, he finally figured out a problem. That is, Summon will obviously develop the 100 Healings technique in the future, but in Boruto, Sakura claims that the 100 Healings technique is a very ancient ninjutsu. This is naturally not Sakura hinting at Summon's age. It is more likely that Summon developed the Yin Seal from the direction of medical ninjutsu in the future, and invented the S-level medical ninjutsu of creation and regeneration, which can greatly exert the power of the Yin Seal in actual combat. Only when she thought she had completed the Yin Seal, Summon would confidently use the name of the 100 Healings technique again. But it is obvious that Summon's 100 Healings technique is probably still inferior to the original 100 Healings technique. And Xia Yan finally understood why teacher Mito so easily taught him the Yin Seal, the most precious ninjutsu of the Uzumaki clan. She even let him know his shortcomings of insufficient chakra through sparring in advance to increase the attractiveness of the Yin Seal. Now it seems that she actually wanted to use Xia Yan's unique ideas and powerful ninjutsu development ability to complete the Yin Seal to a certain extent. In this way, Kushina, who studied the Yin Seal with Xia Yan, will naturally benefit a lot. So on the surface, Xia Yan got the Yin Seal for free, but in fact, Mito also got it for free. It's just that developing his own 100 Healings technique is also a very attractive thing for Xia Yan, so he can only swallow that bait thrown by Mito obediently. After all, the battery function of Yin Seal played an irreplaceable role in Xia Yan's God of Chakra plan a long time ago. Even the chakra capacitor developed by Xia Yan was actually just a byproduct obtained by Xia Yan in the process of copying Yin Seal. It's a pity that the chakra injected into the chakra capacitor will still undergo certain changes in nature, so it cannot be injected into people in reverse, and can only be used to drive those rune creations. Otherwise, Xia Yan's lack of mana would have been solved long ago without waiting to learn Yin Seal. So Xia Yan has been coveting Yin Seal for a long time, and he has had a series of application plans a long time ago. It's like preparing a lot of sauces and waiting for dumplings to be served. At the same time, the Yin Seal uses rune techniques to automatically and precisely release trace amounts of chakra to stimulate cells throughout the body and maintain the body's youth, which also makes Xia Yan feel very jvu. Because this is actually very similar to his idea of performing rune ninjutsu through the intelligent brain, both of which get rid of the shackles of sealing techniques and control the body through rune techniques. The only difference is that the carrier of the intelligent brain is a chakra metal ball, while the carrier of the Yin Seal is the body and chakra of the caster. Moreover, the intelligent brain can only operate with the chakra provided by Xia Yan, while the Yin Seal can operate by consuming the stored chakra. Therefore, Xia Yan's learning of the Yin Seal is equivalent to adding a backup power supply to his own intelligent brain, and it also has a great reference for Xia Yan in terms of application. At least, his chakra intelligent brain upgrade work, which has been stagnant for a long time, has a new breakthrough direction. However, these things are still castles in the air for the time being. Because although the diamond mark formed by the Yin Seal is on the forehead, the rune formula that needs to be formed in the body is all over the body. Therefore, in addition to the sealing technique, it also requires advanced knowledge of medical ninjutsu, a full understanding of various parts of the body, and the ability to repair itself immediately in the event of an accident, in order to reach the threshold of learning the Yin Seal. Even Xia Yan actually doesn't know much about medical ninjutsu, so he has to start from scratch. So in the following time, Xia Yan first reviewed the seal for Kushina, then opened another scroll and conjured up a mountain of medical ninjutsu books. This was the medical ninjutsu information that teacher Mito had specially prepared for them. And this was only part of it. The two looked at each other tacitly, both revealing a distressed look. A few days later, on the playground of the ninja school. Class A of the first year where Obito was taking a physical arts class. As the end of the semester approached, the focus of this course was more on allowing students to practice and increase their combat experience. After each student was called by the teacher, they would go on stage to practice physical arts with the opponent, who was also called Konoha Whirlwind. I saw a girl on the field flashing, and instantly came to a tall boy, and kicked the opponent away with a volley kick. The sharp and decisive action made the students watching inexplicably feel a sense of judo, and they all looked at my guy who was nodding beside him. Why are Lin's fighting moves becoming more and more like Kai's recently? Could it be, students who don't know the function of Xia Yan's training suit can't help but mutter in their hearts? But the question is, why are Tu's fighting moves exactly the same as Kai's? Could it be, is your circle a bit chaotic? The physical training teacher who knows the inside story praised her with both satisfaction and helplessness. Very good, Lin, you have made great progress recently. If you continue to maintain it, you should be able to enter the top 5 in the class at the end of the semester. And the rest of you, you have to learn a lot from Lin. Although the physical training teacher treated Lin as the kid next door to inspire other students, he also knew that Lin's strength was not something that these students could copy now. After all, the fundamental reason for her rapid improvement in strength was the training suit developed by Xia Yan. Of course, Lin's daily hard training cannot be ignored. Simply put, it is technology and hard work. Therefore, the physical training teacher's heart is also a little complicated. Although he is also pleased with Lin's physical training progress, these improvements can only be attributed to the sealing teacher, not him, the physical training teacher, which also makes him a little embarrassed. Not to mention that he heard that the training suits would be officially popularized in the school next school year, which made the Taijutsu teacher a little worried. He was worried that his role would be completely replaced by the training suits. It felt that since Xia Yan came to the school, the teacher's job had become more and more competitive. He thought he would work in this job until retirement, but now he is not so sure. After shaking his head to get rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind, the Taijutsu teacher picked up the form and called the names of the next group of students to practice. Hatake Kakashi vs. Uchiha Obito. The Taijutsu teacher's voice paused slightly, and then he looked at Obito helplessly and said, "Obito, are you still determined to give up this time?" Chapter 158. At this time, Obito was standing next to a nearby tree, still practicing every minute. He was seen with his hands in the tiger seal, stabbing the tree trunk beside him with a focused look, making wood chips fly and pits of varying depths appear. Although he seemed to be doing it easily, in fact, this action is quite difficult, and he needs to concentrate chakra on his index and middle fingers for protection at all times. If you are not careful, it is very likely to cause a finger stab. Obito's practice did not attract much attention from other students. Because he has been practicing this move whenever he has time recently, many trees and walls in the ninja school had traces of his battles. At first, everyone was a little curious and asked what this move was, but Obito always looked very secretive, saying that it was better for you not to know. Over time, everyone got used to it and became accustomed to it. Only Kai and Kakashi, who really knew what move Obito was practicing, would pay attention to Obito's situation from time to time. Whenever they saw Obito poking deeper and deeper pits on the tree trunk, they would feel a slight tightening in their bodies. After hearing the teacher's question, Obito finally stopped. He first looked at Kakashi meaningfully, then looked down at his slightly swollen hands, and finally nodded and said, "Yes, teacher, I give up." Kakashi still had a blank expression on his face. The Taijutsu teacher scratched his head, looking a little helpless. In order to maximize the training effect, sparring in Taijutsu class usually pairs students with similar strength. Obito's ability to spar with Kakashi, who is the oldest in the class, naturally means that the Taijutsu teacher has recognized his strength. After all, since Obito joined Xia Yan's sealing technique research group, his Taijutsu level has been improving at a rapid pace. Now, even if Obito does not use the forbidden technique that made him lame for several weeks, he can still fight with Hinata Holokido on equal terms, with both sides winning and losing. This also means that Obito's current Taijutsu scores, along with Kakashi and Honkazu, are among the top 3 in the class. Of course, we have to exclude the cheating guy. The Taijutsu teacher now knows that Kai actually wears a lot of weight all the time, even during Taijutsu sparring, and has never shown his true strength. The Taijutsu teacher is naturally happy about Obito's progress, although it has nothing to do with him. But what makes him a little helpless is that although Obito is now among the top, every time he arranges Obito to spar with Kakashi, Obito will decisively choose to give up. The Taijutsu teacher also knows that Obito didn't give up because he was afraid of sparring with Kakashi. After all, he had heard about Obito's claim last year that he would defeat Kakashi to keep him in the ninja school. So it is obvious that Obito's avoidance of the battle at this time is not because of fear, but to hide his own information and prevent his fighting habits from being understood by Kakashi. Even now when Obito is sparring with other students, he only uses the most basic fighting methods to reduce the leakage of information. Even the physical training teacher himself is not sure how much Obito's strength is improved, and he doesn't know when he will challenge Kakashi. I'm afraid that only when Obito has the confidence to defeat Kakashi, the two will fight, although he also complained in his heart, is it necessary to make a first-year student's fight so serious? You know, in the Battle of the Valley of the End, Uchiha Madara just caught a fox as a mount and came back to challenge the first-generation Hokage. However, this kind of tail-end counter-attack genius, full of friendship, hard work and victory, still makes the physical training teacher feel a little excited for the first time. Sure enough, a man is a teenager until he dies. That's why he respects Obito's idea and doesn't force Obito to fight Kakashi now. And now he asks Obito every few classes, in fact, just to avoid missing this battle. After all, it is not difficult to see that if these two people don't die young, they are destined to become great ninjas. Therefore, their duel may be of great historical significance in the future. So the physical training teacher also had some small ideas and wanted to participate in this battle as a referee. It would be convenient for him to brag in the future. But to his regret, Obito was still not prepared today. There was no way. The physical training teacher had to pick up the list with regret and reassigned an opponent to the two. This is of course a privilege only for good students. If Obito had said he wanted to give up, he would probably have been spited all over his face by the physical training teacher. The students on the sidelines had similar ideas to the physical training teacher. They found that the battle they had been looking forward to for a long time had not started today, and they all sighed with regret. As the parties involved, Obito and Kakashi were not affected at all. They went on the field and solved the opponents assigned to them by the teacher in a few moves, and then left the field. Then Obito returned to the unlucky tree and continued his previous training. Kakashi also retreated behind that crowd, folded his hands on his chest and closed his eyes to rest. However, the screams of the tree not far away being trampled by Obito still made him a little upset. Damn stupid Obito. Under the mask, there was a barely perceptible curse. Kakashi also felt that Obito's actions were more like a way to mess with his mentality than training. It must be said that the effect was indeed good. Kakashi often dreamed of Obito recently. He dreamed of himself beating this bastard to a pulp. It was a pity that in reality, Obito didn't give him any chance at all. Even if he took the initiative to provoke, Obito would still be as angry as before, but he would eventually calm down and not be fooled. Then he intensified the practice of the forbidden taijutsu beside him. Even when Kakashi went out one morning, he found that the two jujube trees in front of his house had also been killed, and there were dense pits on the trunks. Fortunately, he didn't have to endure this guy for too long. Kakashi raised his eyelids and glanced at Obito, muttering to himself. After all, there are not many days left until the graduation exam. Obito has little time left to challenge himself. After school in the afternoon, on the rooftop of the ninja school teaching building. The members of the sealing technique research group did not bury their head in the sealing technique office to draw talismans like they have recently, but gathered on the rooftop for the first time in a long time. This is because during the research group activities during this period, they have basically completed the study of drawing projection talismans. At the same time, under the guidance of Xia Yan, they have also designed their own drafts of the projection technique, and are finally about to enter the practical stage they are most looking forward to. In order to avoid interfering with each other, the students are scattered all over the rooftop, practicing the use of projection techniques repeatedly. Xia Yan is walking back and forth, giving them instructions from time to time. It can be seen that the students' method of performing projection techniques at this time is more like the original version developed by Xia Yan back then. You need to hold a projection talisman in your hand, and then make a seal to perform this technique. Xia Yan wanted to lower the learning threshold of this technique, so he chose to teach them this method first. In this way, even students with low talent can perform projection technique quickly, so as to avoid too much frustration due to lack of positive feedback. However, in order to use projection technique in actual combat, I'm afraid that you still have to learn the talisman or sealless version. At this time, Xia Yan just walked near home, and saw that she was projecting a big tree in front of her in a very serious manner, and nodded with a smile. Sure enough, among the students, Hong, who has a foundation in illusion, has the best grasp of projection technique. Under Xia Yan's suggestion, Hong chose the natal projection technique to create projections of various environmental objects. And she herself hid in it and secretly cast illusions on the enemy. This kind of nesting doll style operation that combines mental illusions and real illusions is real and fake, which should give the enemy a headache in actual combat. As for why Hong chose the tree as the first thing she practiced projection, it actually has its own reason. This is because she is very good at a similar illusion magic tree binding. This technique can make the enemy see the illusion that they are tied up by growing trees, making their whole body unable to move. When Hong explained her idea, she proudly said that this was an illusion created by the second-generation Ukage, Senjutsu. Although it is just an ordinary illusion, it can make the enemy think that they are using the wood-release ninjutsu, and produce such strong fear as is the one fighting with me, the invincible wood-release user Senju, thus greatly enhancing the effect of the illusion. This kind of operation of guessing people's hearts and even applying the reputation of his brother Senju to illusion has brought great inspiration to the illusion ninjas of Konoha. Therefore, in those days, this magic tree binding was a must-have illusion for every illusion ninja of Konoha. However, Xia Yan was a little speechless after listening to Hong's proud words. After all, aren't there no wood-release users these days? Once this illusion is used, as long as the enemy has normal intelligence, they should quickly realize that it is an illusion. So the unique reputation of the first generation of adults, wood-release, has now played a side effect on this technique. No wonder it was rebounded by Itachi when Hong used this technique in the original work. Obviously, this is a skill that has been eliminated by the version, the Tears of the Times. However, Xia Yan saw Hong's mysterious and confident look at the time, and did not choose to point it out to her face. After all, this kind of thing can only be convincing if you experience it in person. It just so happened that Xia Yan heard that the Uchiha clan had another illusion genius, who would come to the ninja school in the next school year. When the time comes, let Hong and the other party have a few sparring games, and she will naturally know the problem of this technique. By the way, Xia Yan heard Fuinjutsu mention that the name of the illusion genius seemed to be Uchiha. After giving Hong some pointers, Xia Yan walked to Ashuma's side again. Then he found that Ashuma's hair seemed to be a little green. There was no metaphorical meaning. Teacher Xia Yan, you came at the right time. Help me see if my head is green. Ashuma said excitedly. It's green, but not completely green. Xia Yan commented seriously, and then patted Ashuma on the shoulder and encouraged, keep working hard. Oh. Ashuma encouraged himself, I will definitely make my head completely green. I always feel that this direction of effort is a bit wrong, Xia Yan complained in his heart. The design direction of Ashuma's natal projection technique is to add various special effects to himself, so as to achieve the purpose of bluffing or showing weakness to the enemy. But for some reason, Ashuma pointed to his hair and said, I want to dye this thing green. However, Teacher Xia Yan never stifled the imagination of his students, so he did not stop his bold and avant-garde ideas. After also giving Ashuma a few pointers, Xia Yan continued to move forward and came to Lin's side. At this time, there was a cute puppy in front of Lin, and it was making various movements under the control of Lin's seal. Seeing Xia Yan coming over, Lin also made a seal again, letting the puppy walk in front of Xia Yan, then stood up on its hind legs and made a bowing gesture. It looks quite cute. Obviously, this is a projection created by Lin who wants to comfort people through the projection of small animals. After Xia Yan took a quick look, he nodded slightly to show his approval. Although this projection actually still has many flaws, it is already very well done for a beginner. Especially this puppy looks very vivid. I guess Lin has done a lot of homework. Speaking of which, Lin seemed to have said before that she wanted to go to Kakashi's house to see the puppy. Why do I feel that the boys in this research group are a bit green? After Xia Yan complained in his heart, he was about to start commenting on Lin. However, at this moment, the puppy under his feet suddenly raised its head and said in a little girl's voice, Big brother, come and play. Xia Yan shuddered when he heard this, and felt that the shadow of his childhood in his previous life suddenly jumped out to attack him. Lin on the side also smiled and explained, Teacher, I added a little girl's voice to the puppy, what do you think? Xia Yan said dryly. Well done, don't do it again next time. Huh. Lin's eyes widened, and she looked confused. Ahem. Xia Yan coughed twice and explained, what I mean is that although this idea is good, it may deprive people of the fun of guessing the meaning of the small animal's calls. And a real cute creature, even if it can only use the 3 pronunciations of bai, ka, and ki, is enough to express complex meanings. Teacher, are you talking about the lightning monster Pikachu next to the Onmyoji Xiaozi? Lin murmured thoughtfully, and then her eyes became brighter and brighter. I understand. The key is not whether it can speak human language, but to create a logically self-consistent setting for the created creature. No wonder the puppy I projected has many behavioral patterns, but it always feels unreal. As she said, Lin looked at Xia Yan with admiration. And teacher, you clearly said that Pikachu is a creature you made up, but it can be so vivid, as if it really exists. Yes, that's what I mean. Xia Yan showed a teachable smile, but secretly felt a little guilty. So he commented a few more words, asked Lin to continue practicing, and continue to move forward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 159 Pressure. Unlike usual, Obito did not stick to Lin like a licking dog today, but was concentrating on practicing hard in the corner of the rooftop. He quickly made seals with both hands and suddenly spit out a ball of fire in front of him. The fireball was very large, at least 5 or 6 meters. Then the fireball flew to the edge of the rooftop, and actually passed through the guardrail there out of thin air, and finally gradually disappeared in the air. It turned out that Obito was not practicing the great fireball technique, but practicing the projection technique of making fireballs. Although it couldn't hit anyone. The function of this move is to cooperate with the real great fireball technique to form a tactic of real and fake great fireballs. This is one of the killer moves he prepared to use against Kakashi, so naturally he learned it very carefully. However, although the fireball just now was quite realistic, Obito did not seem to be very satisfied, and one could even see a lot of anxiety between his eyebrows. Without a break, Obito quickly started to make seals again and continued to practice. Xia Yan, who was not far away, watched for a while, thought about it, and decided not to disturb his practice for the time being, and continued to walk back. Then he saw a group of indescribable creatures appear in front of him. The reason for the indescribable is that the other party is wrapped in a thick layer of mosaic, and few features can be seen at all. Obviously, this is the effect of Ebisu's life projection technique, the mosaic technique. And his current appearance is the first application method he developed under the guidance of Xia Yan, called the mosaic coat. The idea of this move is to cover the whole body with mosaic projection, so that his attack is more weird and unpredictable, and it can also make it more difficult for the enemy to accurately hit his vital points. Although this mosaic technique is actually a very good way to use the projection technique, Xia Yan's expression will be a little strange every time he sees Ebisu perform this technique. Because Ebisu always likes to wear black, under the thick mosaic filter, Xia Yan always feels that the person standing opposite is a native of the land of thunder without clothes. I feel that I have a sense of harmony with mosaic for some reason. In addition to the students, Kushina is also practicing the projection technique. After all, she is also an assistant teacher. If she can't answer the students' questions about projection techniques in the future, it will be embarrassing. So she actually started learning the projection technique a long time ago. It's just that she fished for 3 days and dried the net for 2 days, and the progress was average. Fortunately, after the last kidnapping incident, she finally learned her lesson and didn't want to be a burden to Xia Yan anymore, so she also invested more energy in learning the projection technique. She already had a solid foundation in the sealing technique, and after she started to study, her progress was naturally very fast. Soon she mastered the projection technique that only needed to be performed through talismans, and now she even began to learn the non-printed version of the projection technique. Compared with those students, Kushina's original projection technique seems particularly simple. Basically, it is to make the ordinary clone technique active and perform various tactical actions. In terms of quantity, she can now probably perfectly create 10 vivid projection clones. This may sound ordinary, but don't forget that Kushina also has a bug-like multiple shadow clone technique. The hundreds of shadow clones she created with all her strength can also create 10 projection clones each. The shamelessness of this trick impressed even Xia Yan, the inventor of the projection technique. Finally, today's non-staff member of the research team, Akai, was actually there. But at this time, he was running around the edge of the rooftop. After Xia Yan walked around the rooftop, he also had a comprehensive understanding of everyone's learning of the projection technique. At the same time, in the process of answering various difficult and complicated questions for everyone, he also gained a lot and obtained a lot of data worth referring to. After all, the correct answers are stereotyped, and the wrong answers are all kinds of strange. Xia Yan, who is proficient in projection techniques, it's difficult to guess what problems students will encounter when learning this ninjutsu. That's why Xia Yan asked the members of the research team to learn projection techniques in advance, in order to give him experience for formal teaching in the future. It just so happened that these students included both men and women, ninjas and civilians, and both top students and poor students, providing a relatively comprehensive sample type. Based on his own observations and students' feedback, Xia Yan also made a lot of adjustments to the teaching of projection techniques, and has basically completed the preparation for the class. So in the next semester, Xia Yan can finally fulfill his promise in the first class and teach projection techniques to students taking the sealing technique class. The winter sky always gets dark quickly, and soon after, the sun was about to set. So after Xia Yan gave a brief evaluation of everyone's practical performance in projection techniques, he announced the end of today's research group activities. But at the end he added that Obito should stay for a while. After the other people who were slightly curious left the rooftop reluctantly, Xia Yan said to Obito in front of him, "Obito, the school has issued a notice that the graduation exam for this school year will be held on the 10th of next month. So there is less than half a month left for you to challenge Kakashi." As he said this, Xia Yan deliberately showed a slightly gloating smile. "How about it? Are you confident that you can defeat Kakashi? Don't forget that you announced that you would defeat Kakashi. All the teachers and students in the ninja school know about it." Obito, who was already a little anxious, turned even darker when he heard this, and tried hard not to roll his eyes. "Wasn't it you, Teacher Xia Yan, who instructed the Gyakai to expose this matter?" Obito, who was complaining in his heart, couldn't help but look at Xia Yan with some resentment. He now felt more and more that Teacher Xia Yan might have planned it and waited to see him make a fool of himself. "After all, Teacher Xia Yan, you clearly analyzed the gap between me and Kakashi a few days ago, and said that if I challenge Kakashi now, the chance of winning is almost zero." In the end, Obito still said in a helpless tone. In fact, he didn't expect that he had worked hard for nearly a semester, and there was still such a big gap between him and Kakashi. This was not because Teacher Xia Yan's guidance was not strong, but because Kakashi was too foul. After all, at the beginning of this semester, Kakashi was already recognized by the teachers as having enough strength to graduate. You have to know that for these ninja school students who were in a rapid development period, age has a great impact on their strength. So even if they are both called geniuses, the first-year Hyuga Hosatsuchi can only beat the second-year and third-year students at most. Due to the difference in size and strength, Hosatsuchi will also have a hard time against the senior students. And Kakashi is about to graduate, which means that he has at least the strength of a genin. Even students who want to graduate early must have a level beyond ordinary graduates to pass. So this also means that Kakashi's strength is opened up several intervals with these first-year students, and is not in the same dimension. Just as the more people know, the more they feel their ignorance. Now that Obito has become much stronger, he has become more and more aware of the terrible strength of Kakashi. "In the past, I was so stupid and naive that I actually thought that as long as I worked harder, I could easily beat Kakashi. In fact, the difference between the two can be seen from the fact that Kakashi can easily defeat Honoki Tsuchi, while he can only fight Honoki Tsuchi on equal terms. More importantly, it is not even known how much strength Kakashi has hidden. To be honest, Obito is actually in a dilemma at this time. After all, even the doorman king of the ninja school knows that he is going to challenge the genius Kakashi. Not to mention those classmates who ask him every day when he will challenge. Even many people in the Uchiha clan have known about this. If it were before, they might just sneer and think that Obito is just grandstanding again. However, since Obito defeated Honoki Tsuchi and even got good results in the clan training, everyone's view of him has changed greatly. The clan members who have never seen Kakashi's extraordinary level only regard him as a genius of normal standards, and naturally have a lot of confidence in Obito's victory over Kakashi. So recently, whenever they meet Obito, they will cheer him up and tell him not to bring shame to the reputation of the Uchiha clan. However, these people did not know that their expectations had turned into heavy pressure on Obito, who was only 5 years old. Driven by this pressure, Obito did not even care about Rin during this period of time, and he practiced hard every day. Even recently, he dreamed of Kakashi when he was sleeping, so it is no wonder that there is always an uncontrollable anxiety on his face. Xia Yan also saw that Obito's condition was not right, so he specially kept him and prepared to give him psychological counseling. Although Xia Yan personally felt that it was no big deal for Obito to lose to Kakashi. After all, Obito is obviously a late bloomer, and it is very normal that he cannot beat the genius Kakashi now. However, Xia Yan was also young, and he knew that many trivial things for adults were all big things for children. Letting Obito not be obsessed with winning or losing will only have a counterproductive effect. So Xia Yan looked at the sunset in the distance and said slowly, "Obito, do you still remember why you challenged Kakashi?" Chapter 160 Special Training. Of course it's to defeat Kakashi so that he can stay in the ninja school, Obito answered subconsciously. Because he has said this answer many times, he believes it. But Xia Yan chuckled and said, "That's not what I said. Because of this reason, I just made it up. It's just to trick Kai into helping you with special training." Xia Yan. Obito immediately showed an unbelievable expression. He always thought that teacher Xia Yan misunderstood him and said this to Kai, so he just let it go. Unexpectedly, he knew from the beginning that it was not for this. Thinking of this, Obito couldn't help but puff up his cheeks and looked at Xia Yan with dissatisfaction. Xia Yan spread his hands and smiled, explaining, "Actually, I didn't make it up. After all, I can see that you, Obito, actually hope that Kakashi will stay in school. It's just that you want to defeat Kakashi. There should be a more fundamental reason." Obito, who was originally angry, was also slightly stunned when he heard this. Hearing what Natsuhiko said, he couldn't help but recall the time when he asked Natsuhiko how to defeat Kakashi, and he felt a little dazed. Because that was only a few months ago, but with the rich and colorful and difficult experience of this semester, he actually felt like he was in another world. It took Obito a long time to recall his original mentality. Did he want to teach the arrogant Kakashi a lesson? A little, but not all. Did he want to wake up Kakashi, who always had a stern face and was always full of hatred? This was also part of the reason, but not all. Obito finally found out that the reason why he wanted to defeat Kakashi at the time was actually very simple. It was just because he recognized Kakashi's strength and had a competitive mentality. Seeing Obito's sudden realization, Xia Yan nodded and said, "It seems that Obito has finally remembered his original intention. In fact, for what you want to do, you don't need any complicated reasons at all. Not doing it requires weighing the pros and cons and finding reasons. Why climb a mountain? Maybe it's just because the mountain is there." Because the mountain is there, Obito couldn't help but mutter. To him, isn't Kakashi a mountain that he constantly wants to climb? Then he heard teacher Xia Yan smiled and said, "So Obito, do you still want to defeat Kakashi now?" Obito didn't answer immediately after hearing this, but closed his eyes. In his mind, there emerged a series of reasons why he must defeat Kakashi. The opinions of teachers and classmates, the expectations of the tribe, the jealousy and sympathy for Kakashi, the idea of not wanting to disappoint teacher Xia Yan and the people who assisted him in training, the reasons imposed on himself by others or himself gradually dissipated. It was as if the shackles that bound him were suddenly removed. At this time, Obito's heart was filled with a strong desire to fight, just like a raging fire, and he just wanted to fight Kakashi right now. After suppressing this emotion in his heart, Obito slowly opened his eyes, and his expression became much more relaxed. He looked at Xia Yan with clear eyes and answered word by word, "Teacher, I still want to defeat Kakashi. Although the possibility is not great, I will do my best, so please continue to guide me, teacher." Xia Yan smiled and said, "Of course, after all, I promised you before that I would help you defeat Kakashi as much as possible. So as long as you don't give up, Obito, I will accompany you to the end, whether it's crying or laughing. And I'm not the only one." Halfway through his words, Xia Yan suddenly snapped his fingers. Then the roof-top door that Xia Yan had set up a barrier on suddenly opened, and a group of guys who had been eavesdropping for a long time fell to the ground unprepared. Lin. Teacher Kushina. Guy, why haven't you all left yet? Obito looked at the members of the research team who had fallen to the ground, with a surprised expression on his face. Everyone finally stood up, feeling a little embarrassed. Kushina said sheepishly, "We're just a little worried about you, Obito," and Lin said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Obito, I didn't realize that you were under so much pressure," Kai said with tears in his eyes. Obito, you are too polite, you can discuss things with me. Ashuma said on the Versailles track. Obito, you have a bad mentality, I understand the feeling of being expected the most, do you want me to teach you some tricks? Ouch. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Kurine's elbow. Ashuma means that during this last period of time, we are also willing to assist you in your special training. Kurine said. Ashuma also smiled and nodded, yes, that's what I mean. It just so happens that my father gave me 2 chakra swords as gifts last year, and each of them is worth 17.5 million taels. So I have also been studying swordsmanship recently. Although it is not as good as the swordsmanship taught by White Fang himself, it should be helpful to you. Kai also gave a thumbs up and said, then leave the physical skills to me. In fact, I have also observed Kakashi for a long time and have a certain understanding of his movements. Hong said, then I can also help you, Obito, practice breaking illusions. I heard that Kakashi is an all-rounder, so to defeat him, you also have to be wary of illusions. Kushina also joined in the fun and said, I heard that Kakashi used the multiple shadow clone technique in class a few days ago, so let me help you, Obito, practice fighting the shadow clones. Lin said, then I will be responsible for preparing military ration pills for you, Obito, just like we did in the special training before. Ebisu also held up his sunglasses and said, although I don't have the special skills like others, I should be able to help you practice ninjutsu at the Meridian Scroll. Everyone, Obito couldn't help but show a touching expression on his face when he heard everyone's words. Xia Yan also smiled slightly when he saw this passionate drama, and took out a card very playfully, and then injected chakra into it. Then the special training music Gonna Fly Now that Obito and Dakai were very familiar with began to echo on the rooftop. With the melodious and exciting music, time began to move backwards. With the assistance of all members of the research team, Obito devoted himself to training. During lunch break, after school, on the rooftop of the teaching building, in the backyard of the Kinen Tavern, Obito was racing against time to practice at any time and anywhere, and even secretly studied and improved his projection technique during class. The other students in the research team also took turns to fight with Obito, simulating the situation of fighting with Kakashi, who had rich skills. Kai's Taijutsu, Ashuma's swordsmanship, Kurine's illusion, and even Kushina's shadow clone technique, Rin and Ebisu also provided a lot of help to Obito in terms of logistics, saving him a lot of time. Of course, the most important thing is Xia Yan. In addition to teaching projection techniques, he also formulated and practiced various tactics for Obito based on his current situation. The days passed quickly. Finally, the time was fixed on February 10, the day of the annual graduation exam of the ninja school, chapter 161. Fate. In the early morning, the sky in the distance was still dark. Looking down from above, the hidden leaf village was still shrouded in darkness, as if it was asleep. Only on the surface of the lower reaches of the Nanga River that ran through the entire village would a little fire flash from time to time, as if waking up the entire village. Fire style. Great fireball technique. A young man's clear shout sounded, echoing on the empty riverbank. Then a blazing fireball bloomed on the river surface, illuminating the surroundings as if it were daytime. At the same time, it also stretched the shadows of the 2 people, one big and one small, next to them. Not long after, the fireball gradually extinguished, and the surroundings returned to darkness. Obito, who had just spit out the fireball, took a few breaths before turning his head and asking, Teacher Xia Yan, how was it this time? Did it work? Sorry, I was dozing off just now so I didn't see it. How about you try it again? Teacher. Okay, I was just joking. Xia Yan, who was standing by, saw Obito's speechless face and decided not to tease him anymore. He touched his chin and said, it was basically successful. After all, even I couldn't tell at the first time whether it was the fireball projection technique or the great fireball technique. Although there are still many areas that can be improved, it shouldn't be a problem to use it against Kakashi. After hearing what Xia Yan said, Obito clenched his fists in an instant, and an excited smile broke out on his face. Great, I finally caught up. Teacher, I finally got the last piece of the puzzle you mentioned. Thank you, Teacher Xia Yan. As he said this, Obito opened his hands with gratitude and ran towards Xia Yan. Then Xia Yan dodged it with a flash. Sorry, I'm not like Might and his son, who have the habit of hugging men. Xia Yan said politely. Obito didn't care about his empty-handedness, and turned around and said excitedly, then can I go to duel Kakashi now? Xia Yan smiled and said, "Don't worry, you can practice a few more times, and then eat some Bingliong pills, and it won't be too late to set off after a rest." Yes. As Obito promised, the sky in the distance just turned pale, and the first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on the two of them, making them squint their eyes. The sky finally brightened. At 8 o'clock in the morning, ninja school. The school's graduation exams are always held on weekends, and a few days earlier than the final exams of other grades. So today, only the senior students who came to school to take the exams came. In addition, many parents of students gathered at the school gate early. Some of them were tirelessly telling their children various precautions, and then watched them enter the school with a worried look on their faces. Some parents were gathering in groups of 3 or 5, relieving their nervousness by chatting. After all, although the graduation exam of this ninja school is not difficult to pass, the exam results will directly affect the class arrangement after graduation. The guidance and tasks to be performed by Jin and Orochi are very different. So it is not surprising that these parents are so serious about the graduation exam that concerns their children's future. Of course, those big ninjas who have already obtained the internal quota are excluded. Just as they were chatting enthusiastically, a small figure appeared among the senior students who were walking towards the school gate one after another, and he looked particularly eye-catching. Did the kid forget that it is the weekend and there is no class at the ninja school? A parent who did not know the truth pointed at him and laughed. Another parent quickly pressed his hand down and whispered, "Don't talk nonsense, don't you know that White Fang's son will also take the graduation exam today?" "What? I remember he just went to the ninja school last year. How come he took the graduation exam this year? 5 years old." No one believes it, and I don't believe it either. Perhaps I can only say that he is worthy of being White Fang's son. It's a pity that Tatake Junin, alas, humph, no matter how capable he is, those who abandon a mission without authorization are not qualified to be ninjas. Amid the whispers of parents at the entrance of the ninja school, Kakashi walked into the school expressionlessly. To be honest, he was already accustomed to the sympathetic or mocking looks of the villagers. It was as if he was not a living person, but the tombstone of Konoha White Fang. Seeing that he didn't make any comments, it seemed to be a bit lacking. But this situation will soon end, Kakashi said to himself. Because today he will finally graduate from the ninja school. As long as he becomes a ninja, he can wash away the shame that man brought to the family with his own efforts. But, before that, he still had one last thing to do at the ninja school. Kakashi pulled out a letter from his pocket and clenched it slightly, then left the large group heading to the exam venue and walked towards the back of the school. A student was surprised to see this. "Hey, where is Hatake Kakashi going? The venue is not over there." "Who knows, maybe he went to the bathroom." Not long after, Kakashi walked all the way to the depths of the grove behind the ninja school. Seeing that there was no one under a crooked tree not far away, he couldn't help but frown slightly. According to the challenge letter that suddenly appeared in his drawer yesterday, Obito should be here now. Could it be, this idiot is late again? Kakashi sighed softly and continued towards the crooked tree. As he approached, he soon found a training doll with white hair, and whose body shape and clothes were very similar to his, hanging under the tree by a rope, swaying gently in the wind. Seeing this, the corners of Kakashi's mouth under the mask couldn't help but twitch slightly. "Don't be angry." This was obviously Obito's tactic. It was also written in the ninja code that a ninja should not show emotions under any circumstances. Kakashi reminded himself in his heart, and then took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Unexpectedly, a strong wind blew over at this time, blowing the doll over, revealing its severely damaged back. Even the yellow sponge came out, fire style. Great fireball technique. Water style. Water wave. Earth style. Earth core beheading technique. A moment later, when Kakashi drilled out from the ground, the doll that looked very similar to him had disappeared from this world forever. Kakashi, who had just emerged from the ground, gently brushed off the dust on his body and exhaled gently. Damn, his actions were controlled by emotions again. Archie Obito, this guy always finds tricky angles to irritate himself. As expected, Obito is really annoying. Fortunately, I don't have to see his stupid face every day in the future. Let's use this duel to sever this bad relationship between us. Kakashi made up his mind and looked around again, speechless. So, when will Obito come? Chapter 162 Ninja Training. Time passed by minute, and it was soon 8:30. Kakashi had been waiting under the crooked tree for more than half an hour, but still hadn't seen Obito, and he was getting more and more impatient. After all, the graduation exam would start at 9 o'clock, and there wasn't much time left. After waiting for a few more minutes, Kakashi, who didn't want to miss the exam because of Obito, finally made a decision. Sure enough, he who had high expectations of that idiot was no different from an idiot. Kakashi laughed at himself and prepared to leave for the exam venue. However, at this moment, a chaotic sound of footsteps came from afar. Kakashi looked in the direction of the sound and saw Obito running over in a hurry. Sorry. Obito ran over, holding his knees with both hands, panting. I actually set out to come here very early, it's just, I happened to meet an old lady who forgot how to get home on the way, and I thought it was still early, so I sent her home first. I didn't expect that old lady actually lives in a nursing home. There are a group of elderly people who need help there. Kakashi was silent. If it was someone else, he might still think that the other party was quibbling. But he had heard about Obito's physique that attracted the elderly, and even witnessed it several times with his own eyes, so he reluctantly accepted his statement. Seeing that Obito seemed to want to explain in detail what he did for those elderly people, Kakashi had to speak. Then let's get started quickly. Oh, yes, then. Obito also reacted and answered. However, Kakashi saw that he was still sweating and out of breath, and thought about it and said dryly, "Why don't you take a rest first?" He didn't want Obito to use this as an excuse to continue to pester him in the future. But, don't you still want to hiss? Obito, who wanted to decline politely, suddenly made a sound of pain and subconsciously touched his lips with his hand. Kakashi only then noticed that there were several blisters on Obito's lips that looked like they were burned by fire. Kakashi's heart was slightly disturbed. When Obito saw Kakashi looking over, he quickly pursed his lips and pretended to be calm and said again, "Kakashi, don't you still have to take the graduation exam?" Kakashi said lightly, "It doesn't matter, anyway, this battle will be over soon." Obito's face froze when he heard it, and then a few blue veins bulged on his forehead. Damn, I accidentally hit Kakashi again. Hatake Kakashi, this guy always finds a tricky angle to show off. Sure enough, Kakashi is really annoying. Although he was a little indignant, Obito still accepted Kakashi's kindness and sat cross-legged on the ground to rest and refine chakra. The two were speechless for a while, and the scene was very awkward for a while. In order to break this atmosphere, Obito had to bring up their past again, and while taking a break, he told Kakashi about his experience of helping the old man just now. After a few minutes, Obito adjusted his breathing, and Kakashi also learned a lot of useless knowledge about caring for the elderly. The duel between the two was finally about to begin. After Obito stood up, he kept a certain distance from Kakashi and stared at each other from a distance. However, at this moment, a strange laugh echoed in the grove. Then Kakashi and Obito heard a male voice. First, never act on impulse. Second, never miss any bad thing. Third, absolutely judge fairly and beautifully. Just as the two looked around in confusion, a white figure appeared between them without warning. Referee machine, no, it's me, Xia Yan. The one who spoke was naturally Xia Yan himself. Teacher Xia Yan, how come you are here? Obito looked at Teacher Xia Yan in a white coat not far away and shouted in surprise. Kakashi looked at Xia Yan with a serious face. Because until now, he still didn't know how the other party appeared. Is this the strength of a special genin? No wonder Obito has made such rapid progress this semester under the guidance of this teacher Yushin. But if the special genin is so powerful, then how powerful will the genin, especially the elite among the genin, be? Speaking of which, he has not seen the real strength of that man with his own eyes. But I'm afraid there is no chance. Thinking of this, Kakashi's heart sank, and then he quickly shook his head to drive away the distracting thoughts. Xia Yan, who was very satisfied with his brilliant appearance, was answering Obito's question with a smile. Obito, don't you know that according to school rules, ninja school students' sparring must be carried out in the presence of a teacher to avoid any accidents? Not to mention that your sparring this time can be said to have reached the level of genin, so naturally I have to watch here. Otherwise, if anything happens to any of you, Principal Baiwako will not let me go. So I will be the referee for your match. Xia Yan said, then turned his head to look at Kakashi, who had white hair like himself, and smiled gently. Kakashi, you have no objection, right? Don't worry, although I assist Obito in special training, I will never favor him. Kakashi naturally knew that the other party was instructing Obito, but he didn't care too much, so he shook his head gently to indicate that he had no objection. Xia Yan nodded and said, then I will tell you the rules. In order to let you fight with all your strength, this duel adopts the rules of the senior practical class. Except for high-powered ninja tools such as detonating attacks, there are no restrictions on other ninja tools. And if you encounter a situation that will cause serious injury or death, I will stop it immediately, so you don't need to hold back at all. Of course, the party I save is equivalent to failure. Do you have any other questions? No, teacher. Obito replied. And Kakashi shook his head again. Well, it's getting late, so let's get started quickly. Xia Yan stepped back a few steps, looked at the two people left and right, and said loudly. Then, the ninja sparring begins. Both sides make the seal of opposition. Kakashi and Obito raised their right hands in response and made a seal of opposition with each other. This seal itself is a simplified version of the seal that is often used to concentrate chakra, so it is also used in the ceremony before sparring to indicate that one is about to start attacking. Then Xia Yan raised his hand and quickly lowered it, announcing, "Let's begin the sparring." As soon as Xia Yan finished speaking, he saw the ground under Kakashi's feet slightly dented, and he himself rushed towards Obito at a very fast speed. As expected of Kakashi, he actually mastered the instant body technique to this extent. Xia Yan secretly praised him in his heart. However, Kakashi's desire to fight quickly was naturally within his calculations. Even the old lady that Obito met at the beginning was arranged by Xia Yan, in order to compress Kakashi's tactical space and make the situation easier to develop according to his script. Sure enough, unlike Kakashi who was indomitable, Obito gathered chakra at the bottom of his feet as planned the moment Xia Yan announced the start, and then flew backwards and retreated quickly. He saw Kakashi approaching him at a speed that a ninja school student should not have, and he sighed in his heart. It's the same as what the teacher thought. Then he continued to retreat, while quickly forming seals with both hands, Great Fireball Jutsu. The next moment, a burning fireball with a diameter of 2 meters spewed out of Obito's mouth and flew towards Kakashi at high speed. This guy has actually mastered the fire style. Kakashi was slightly shocked. After all, he had only mastered 4 types of nature changes, and Obito actually mastered 1. More importantly, this fireball is so fast. Although he was also rushing forward quickly, Kakashi was very keenly aware that the speed of this fireball was much faster than usual. He thought that the small size of the fireball was caused by Obito's lack of training. But now it seems that this is a compromise he made to increase the speed of the fireball. However, this speed is not enough. Although he was still rushing forward at a high speed, Kakashi actually left himself a lot of margin and could change direction at any time. And he actually did so. Kakashi's figure shook and dodged the attack of the fireball with a flash. The smaller size of the fireball actually made it easier for him to do this action, and he could even continue to rush towards Obito without slowing down. However, at the moment when he avoided the fireball, he finally felt a sense of disobedience. It was a sound. He only realized now that the fireball did not make any sound at all. With his extremely smart fighting skills, he thought of a possibility at that moment, and the several shurikens flying towards him and Obito following closely behind also proved this possibility. The real Great Fireball technique, the caster could not recover so quickly. So this is not the Great Fireball technique, but the projection technique. Thanks to Obito's tireless promotion of the interesting things he saw in the sealing technique class in front of him, Kakashi also has a certain understanding of that projection technique, so he was able to notice this possibility so quickly. And the speed of the fireball just now was so fast, just to make it more difficult for the enemy to judge. In the blink of an eye, Kakashi had thought so much. However, he didn't have time to think too much, because those shurikens had already flown in front of him. Under the shuriken throwing technique that the Uchiha clan is best at, these shurikens accurately shot at the vital points of his body. Kakashi, who was still dodging the inertia of the fireball phantom, also felt that it was a bit tricky to deal with these shurikens. Even in the next moment, he subconsciously grasped the short knife behind him. But he finally let go of his hand and avoided the shurikens with his body skills. However, this choice also led to Obito attacking him under the cover of shuriken, and Kakashi's body shape had not yet adjusted. He could not fully exert his strength to fight against Obito with physical skills, and could only passively defend. What's more terrifying is that Obito seems to have conducted targeted training. Although the physical skills he is using now are nothing special, they are continuous and do not give Kakashi any chance to adjust. As a result, with the combination of layer tactics, fireball projection, shuriken, and a series of targeted physical skills, this battle has a shocking scene. The invincible Kakashi of the ninja school was actually beaten by the once low-ranked Obito. Many thanks to the 600 reward from the book Friend Picked Up a Little Fox. Chapter 163 Obito vs Kakashi. Teacher Xia Yan was right. Seeing that he could beat Kakashi, Obito, who was still attacking, was in great shape for a while, and this thought flashed through his mind. As expected, even a genius like Kakashi could not violate the laws of nature. Even if he could defeat senior students with his superb skills and even graduate early. But in terms of physical fitness, he did not have a qualitative gap with his peers. So once he was at a disadvantage, and he made it difficult for him to use his skills through continuous close attacks, then even the genius Kakashi would become no different from an ordinary ninja school student. And the battle of ninja school students is about speed and strength. It just so happens that these 2 points are Obito's strengths. After all, he was the one with the largest meridian capacity among the members of the research team, and for most of the semester, he had further widened his meridians through radio gymnastics every day. So his current meridian capacity has far exceeded the level that ordinary ninja school students should have, and can even beat many genin. The increase in the capacity of the meridians also means an increase in the amount of chakra in the body, which in turn increases the level of activation of the body, ultimately achieving the effect of enhancing strength and speed. The large capacity meridian system that once made it difficult for Obito to learn ninjutsu and was regarded as the last one, finally began to bloom with its due brilliance under Xia Yan's training. So in this situation of competing in physical fitness, Obito is the more talented one among the two fighting parties. Just as Obito thought, Kakashi at this time also felt an unprecedented sense of frustration. Although he had experienced similar feelings before, that was when he was sparring with adults and they used force to defeat his cleverness. But he never expected that he would experience this feeling in a sparring with ninja school students. And, the opponent happened to be Obito. Kakashi kept dodging left and right, fighting and retreating, trying to distance himself and regroup. However, Obito stuck to him like a dogskin plaster, and was obviously determined to fight him in close combat. Moreover, what this guy used at this time was the Konoha fluid technique that he had only learned for half a semester. I just don't know how he copied Akagi's moves completely, and there was no flaw. Instead, he took advantage of the simple and direct characteristics of this set of physical skills, and through continuous attacks, he didn't have a chance to breathe. So now Kakashi feels like he is playing a game of shogi endgame. Obviously, he has mastered a lot of means, but in the situation set by Obito, he can only take one step at a time, and there is no room for him to use his means. At the same time, the pain from his arm that kept resisting Obito's attacks made Kakashi feel more solemn. This guy has great strength. Are you sure he is from the Uchiha clan, not the Akimichi clan? Although he couldn't help but complain in his heart, Kakashi had already regarded Obito as an opponent who was a threat to him, and his mentality became more serious than ever. Because if he couldn't break through as soon as possible, he might really be beaten to death by Obito. Kakashi, who was praised by everyone as a true genius, could actually lose to this Uchiha Obito who was a slacker, a big fool, and a nuisance. Kakashi was a little dazed when he thought of this, because if someone had said this to him half an hour ago, he would have sneered. However, the facts in front of him made it impossible for him to refute. If Obito really beat him, he would probably brag about it for the rest of his life. Thinking of this possibility, Kakashi couldn't help but feel a little scared, and then a cold light flashed in his eyes. It seems that only that trick can be used. Kakashi made up his mind and pushed away Obito's left hand, and saw the opponent's right hand hit him head-on with another straight punch. However, this time he did not dodge or block, but quickly formed seals with both hands, and at the same time his body tilted, and he took Obito's powerful blow at his left shoulder. Obviously, he still underestimated the power of Obito's attack, and the severe pain from his left shoulder almost interrupted his spell. However, thinking of the terrible consequences of being defeated by Obito, Kakashi still gritted his teeth and completed the last seal. The next moment, Obito, who was originally happy for hitting Kakashi, lost his luster in his eyes. Seeing Kakashi's figure gradually disappear, he was unaware of it. In his blurred eyes, there was only the picture of countless leaves being blown all over the sky by the strong wind. In reality, Kakashi, who kept his hands in the sealed state, finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Obito standing still with his eyes dull. The amount of chakra in this guy's body was unexpectedly huge. The Naraku sighting technique he had just learned almost failed to disrupt his chakra flow. At this time, Kakashi finally understood why Obito was about the same age as him, but he could beat him in strength and speed. He didn't know about the Meridian training method, and he couldn't help but sigh that Obito was an Uchiha after all, and inherited the powerful chakra talent of this clan. But everything was over, and he was still better in this ninja sparring. Although he had the idea that the outcome was decided, Kakashi still maintained the posture of making hand seals and did not step forward to end the sparring. There was no way, this was actually the biggest weakness of illusion. Once the spell was stopped, the enemy would wake up instantly. If there was no help from his companions, it was very likely that he would see that the enemy had been controlled, but he could not give the enemy the final blow. Therefore, the illusions that have been passed down to the present generally focus on causing psychological damage to the enemy through the illusions created. Then, the illusion is released at the moment when the enemy is strongly shaken, thereby increasing the enemy's reaction time and creating a chance to defeat the enemy. The Naruto knowing technique that Kakashi is using now, although the learning difficulty is only D level, is also this type of illusion. This technique can guide the opponent to see the scene that can cause the most fear in his heart, causing great psychological damage to the opponent. However, the disadvantage of this technique is that the caster himself cannot control the scene that the opponent sees, so he can only wait until the opponent successfully scares himself before launching the next attack. Therefore, Kakashi will continue to stand in place to cast the spell and cannot end the battle directly. Although he was confident that even if he directly removed the illusion and let the battle return to a balance, he could easily defeat the opponent as he had already understood Obito's tactics. However, since there was not much time left before the exam, Kakashi did not want to cause any trouble, so he decided to go through the whole process and defeat Obito directly. Fortunately, not long after, Kakashi saw that Obito's expression gradually changed unpredictably, and he was obviously frightened by the terrifying scene he created. I just don't know what kind of scene he saw now. Kakashi, who felt that the heat was about right, was staring at Obito intently, ready to remove the illusion and attack at the moment when the opponent's emotions changed most violently. However, at this moment, something strange happened. Not knowing what went wrong, Kakashi felt that several chakras suddenly surged out of Obito's meridians, dispersing the chakra flow that he had worked so hard to disturb. Damn it! Seeing that Obito's eyes suddenly became clear, Kakashi secretly cried out in his heart that something was wrong. Bang! He was still in that state of making hand seals, and Obito kicked him in the stomach with anger. He then stepped back, holding his stomach, and felt his internal organs churning. It was a close call. Obito, who kicked Kakashi away, was shocked and angry, and he wiped a cold sweat in his heart. He almost fell into Kakashi's illusion. I didn't expect this guy to be so decisive. Even if he was injured, he would still use the illusion just now. Obito couldn't help but praise teacher Xia Yan's ingenuity again. In fact, in the final sprint special training before, he had practiced with Hong, who was good at illusions, several times, but every time he couldn't break Hong's illusions and was defeated. Teacher Xia Yan also said that his willpower was too weak and he was too easily immersed in the illusion created by the illusion. Therefore, although he had powerful chakra, he couldn't break the illusion by himself. Obviously, this problem cannot be solved overnight, so for the battle between him and Kakashi soon, teacher Xia Yan also found another way and provided him with another solution. That is the dark gymnastics that made him lame for a while. This is actually a technique that uses the meridian training method to guide the flow of chakra through movements and applies it to combat. The eagle takeoff he used at the beginning is to guide the chakra to accelerate the flow and then gather it in the right foot, so as to burst out the power beyond the limit of the body. But this time, the method taught by teacher Xia Yan is contrary to the usual method. The teacher taught him a set of movements to guide the flow of chakra, so as to store the concentrated chakra in several acupuncture points in the meridians that are not usually touched. It is not too difficult to achieve this step. The real difficulty is that the chakra in the meridians will flow from high pressure to low pressure like water or air until it returns to balance. So this also means that he must distract himself to control these chakras at all times and keep them in those acupuncture points. But compared to learning to break the illusion by himself, this technique that only requires hard practice to develop a habit is more in line with Obito's personality. So in the end, before the duel with Kakashi, he finally learned the basics of this technique. And his efforts were not in vain. This technique really made a great contribution. Because once he was in the illusion, when he was getting deeper and deeper in the illusion, he would naturally forget to suppress these chakras. So these chakras stored in the acupoints will be like the sun bursting through the dark clouds, dispelling the haze caused by the illusion to the meridian system. And this is exactly why this move was named Seven Color Sunshine by teacher Xia Yan. After kicking Kakashi back a few steps, Obito, after sighing in his heart at teacher Xia Yan's perfect plan, rushed forward without stopping, taking advantage of the victory to pursue and not letting Kakashi have another chance to perform illusions. After all, this move of his needs to use a set of actions in advance to guide the chakra into specific acupoints, so it is difficult to perform in battle. If Kakashi casts a genjutsu again, he will be finished. Moreover, the scene he saw in the illusion just now also made him feel a little scared, and he didn't want to experience such a scene again. Because what he saw in the illusion just now is actually the scene of Rin and Kakashi holding hands and walking the dog together. For Obito, who was only 5 years old, this was the most terrifying thing he could imagine. In the blink of an eye, Obito had rushed in front of Kakashi, and saw that the other party was still holding his stomach and bending over. It seemed that he was kicked hard by his kid just now. Could it be that I am really going to win? At the moment when this thought emerged in Obito's mind, he saw Kakashi's upper body slightly raised, revealing his hands that were making hand seals. No. This guy was not holding his stomach, but was using the cover of bending over and arching his back to make hand seals and perform ninjutsu. At the moment when Obito reacted, lightning flashed around Kakashi. A burst of blue-white electric current came out from the bottom of his feet, and shot out towards Obito along the ground. Lightning release. Ground walk. Damn, I was still a step too slow. Obito cursed inwardly, and at the same time, his body dodged to the left, barely avoiding the attack of the lightning release. Sure enough, the attack just after waking up was too sloppy, and did not implement the idea of close combat. But there was nothing he could do about it. Because Obito didn't know the principle of the Naraku viewing technique, he thought that Kakashi knew that he had a good impression of Lin, so he deliberately showed him such a scene. So in a moment of anger, Obito would use the attack just now in anger. But he didn't expect that this small flaw would be caught by Kakashi, thus getting rid of the disadvantage. Seeing that the advantageous situation he had created with the help of teacher Xia Yan and with great effort was finally broken by Kakashi, Obito felt helpless. Sure enough, Kakashi was too foul. Why are we all first-year students? Why are you so outstanding? No matter what difficulties you encounter, you can come up with a new method to solve them. He had the advantage of time, place and people, but he ended up punching and kicking Kakashi. Although these two blows should have a certain impact on Kakashi, without the advantage created by the tactics just now, the next battle will definitely be very difficult. What Obito, who was struggling in his heart, didn't know was that Kakashi, who was staring at him, had gotten rid of the predicament, but his heart was not at peace. Taijutsu, Genjutsu, and Ninjutsu. These three are known as the three major experiences of ninja fighting. Kakashi, who had not found any rivals in the ninja school for a long time, didn't expect that one day he would be forced to use all his means by his peers, but he still couldn't take down the opponent. Thinking of this, Kakashi couldn't help but look at him up and down as if he had seen Obito for the first time. Because he finally realized a fact. Obito is very strong. Then he looked at Obito with a complicated look. Obviously, he was just a slacker last semester. How much effort did this guy put in for this battle? Why? Kakashi's lips moved a few times under his mask. He knew that there was not much time left and it was not the time to talk, but he still couldn't help asking in a dry voice. Why? Why did you do it to this extent? Why are you so obsessed with me? Chapter 164. Fireball Technique. Hearing Kakashi's question, Obito, who was about to continue attacking, gradually slowed down his pace and finally stopped. To be honest, I don't know much about it either. He shook his head. If it was when I first came to the ninja school, the reason was very simple. At the time, I simply didn't like you who always acted cruel, so I often quarreled with you and said that I would defeat you sooner or later. Speaking of which, I was really too stupid and naive back then. I actually thought that I could easily defeat you after opening the Sharingan. Obito, who was almost 6 years old, looked nostalgic. After hearing what Obito said, Kakashi was also slightly dazed. Obviously, what Obito said was only a few months ago, but he felt that it had been a long time. Time may really be the best filter. Because he thought of the days when he quarreled with Obito, Kakashi actually missed it a little. However, Obito's next words quickly cooled his heart. But this semester, Kakashi, you've become a different person. You have a stern face all day long, and you don't argue with me. You're even planning to graduate early. Obito couldn't help but laugh at himself. To be honest, whether you graduate or not, Kakashi, doesn't really matter to me. I should be happy that I don't have to see your stinky face every day. But for some reason, I always felt that I couldn't let you leave the ninja school with this expression. That's when I really came up with the idea of defeating you. Because it's the only way I can think of. Even if you've become indifferent to a lot of things, you shouldn't be able to keep up that poker face if you're defeated by someone your age. Kakashi remained silent and continued to listen quietly. Later, I got help from Teacher Natsuhiko, Teacher Kushina and many others, and started special training to defeat you. I became stronger. A lot of people expected me to do that. In order to live up to everyone's help, to respond to other people's expectations, and to verify the results of my special training, I got several more reasons to defeat you. Sometimes these reasons even make me feel a little breathless. Having said this, Obito turned his head and looked at Teacher Natsuhiko, who was silent and like a transparent man. Fortunately, Teacher Xia Yan enlightened me at the time and made me understand the truth. It turns out that when you really want to do something, you don't need too complicated reasons. Obito looked at Kakashi deeply and said, I have become a lot stronger than before, but I finally realized how powerful you are, Kakashi. But the more this happens, the more I don't want to lose to you. Maybe in the final analysis, Obito showed a self-deprecating smile and said, I just don't want to be left far behind by you, and I don't even want to have the qualifications to quarrel with you. After a pause, Obito touched the back of his head again and said, but although my grades are not good, I'm not as stubborn as Bai. So I still can't do what the teacher said about having no distractions. These reasons soon mix together, and even I don't know what I'm thinking in my heart. So I can't give you the answer you want, Kakashi. At this point, Obito slowly stretched out his hands to the ninja tool bag on his lower back, took out 4 shurikens from each of them and clamped them between his fingers, while continuing. Fortunately, Mr. Xia Yan also said that a first-class ninja can understand the other's thoughts without saying anything after fighting once. So if you, who are called a genius by everyone, really want to know the answer, then find it out yourself through this battle. After saying that, Obito crossed his hands in front of him and stared at Kakashi intently. After listening to Obito's answer, Kakashi still said nothing, and even his expression under the mask did not fluctuate much. But Xia Yan, who was acting as a human camera on the side, could detect that Kakashi seemed to give people a different feeling. Then he saw Kakashi take out a kunai from his ninja tool bag for the first time and hold it in his hand, also staring at Obito not far away. Without words, he has expressed his meaning with his actions. The attack Kakashi is finally going to be serious, so after a very characteristic part of the ninja world, the battle finally resumed. However, the two sides of the battle were still standing there motionless, looking at each other with a vigilant look. Because the conversation just now has given this battle a deeper meaning, it makes them dare not act rashly, and they are all looking for a chance to win with one strike. Xia Yan, who was standing by, took a look at the clock on the system interface and found that there were only 10 minutes left before the graduation exam. However, the two people in front of him seemed to have forgotten about this matter, and only each other existed in their eyes. As if infected by this atmosphere, the whole grove was silent. Time passed by minute, until a moment later, a raven on the crooked tree seemed to be unable to bear such a depressing atmosphere, and suddenly flapped its wings and flew into the sky. As a result, at the moment when the tranquility of the grove was broken, the two people moved at the same time. Swish, swish, swish. With Obito's hands swinging, 8 shurikens shot out and flew towards Kakashi at high speed with the momentum of breaking the wind. Kakashi leaned forward and rushed forward, and at the same time blocked the shurikens flying towards him one by one with the kunai in front of him. However, the distance between the two did not shorten immediately, because after Obito threw the shuriken, he retreated backwards and began to quickly form seals with both hands, fire style. Great fireball technique. The next moment, Kakashi, who was still leaning forward, saw a fireball with a diameter of 2 meters flying towards him. This idiot, Kakashi said in his heart, and continued to rush forward without slowing down. Seeing the fireball getting bigger and bigger, Kakashi did an amazing move without changing his expression. He didn't dodge or evade, but accelerated directly and rushed into the fireball in an instant. I didn't expect that fireball to be real, Kakashi died. Xia Yan on the side couldn't help but complain in his heart. But it was obvious that this fireball was just an illusion like before. So Kakashi rushed through the fireball with the key points of the instant body technique and suddenly appeared in front of Obito. Bang! The sound of the kunai colliding echoed in the grove. Although Kakashi was caught off guard, Obito managed to block Kakashi's fierce attack with his kunai in time. Unfortunately, his movements were a little slow, and he was unable to fully exert his strength to block Kakashi's attack, and his posture collapsed at once. Bang! Kakashi kicked out and hit Obito's stomach squarely, kicking him back repeatedly. Then Kakashi rushed forward again and launched a storm-like attack on Obito. It was obvious that both the previous kick and the current attack were in response to Obito's previous moves. This made Xia Yan on the side speechless. I didn't expect Kakashi to be so petty. Dang dang dang. Amid the endless sound of Kanea colliding, Obito, who was being suppressed, had the same idea as Xia Yan. At this time, he finally experienced the frustration that Kakashi had just felt. To be honest, if he hadn't improved his ability to deal with swordsmanship through sparring with Ashuma, he would probably have been defeated now. To make matters worse, Kakashi not only abused Obito's body, but also, contrary to his usual behavior, stabbed him in the heart. You said so many big words just now, how come you can only do this? And the projection technique just now, you don't think I will be fooled? If you want to deceive me again, you must at least learn to match your voice, don't you still have that skill? No matter how strong you become, you are still a fool. Who do you say is a fool? Obito was so angry at Kakashi's words that he was smoking, and he didn't even notice that the other party had slightly changed back to his previous appearance and started arguing with him. Is your trick really exhausted? Kakashi murmured again in a voice that Obito could barely hear. That's right. Learning so many things in one semester is already an extraordinary achievement for a fool like Obito. Don't think I can't hear you just because you whispered. Obito was completely furious. Seeing the opportunity when Kakashi punched him in that chest, he did not dodge and punched Kakashi's left shoulder. Obviously, he also planned to imitate Kakashi's method just now, exchanging injuries to get rid of the suppression. Originally, Obito's exchange was a stupid act in Kakashi's eyes. But after the battle just now, he had a deep understanding of Obito's brute force and endurance, and his left shoulder was also injured in the exchange just now. In the case that there was no guarantee that this attack could defeat Obito, Kakashi could not bear the risk of his left shoulder being severely injured again, so he could only suddenly retreat and politely rejected Obito's exchange. However, this also gave Obito an opportunity to retreat again and make a seal with both hands for the third time, this move again. Obito, what on earth is he planning? Watching Obito's familiar seals, Kakashi couldn't help but frown, while he kept chasing forward. Obito quickly sealed, then took a deep breath and spit forward. Fire style. Great fireball technique. Boom. A blazing fireball spewed out of his mouth and flew towards Kakashi with the momentum of a prairie fire. However, for Kakashi, who had already determined that this was a projection, his heart was not moved at all, and he even wanted to laugh. It seems that Obito really has no other means. Then a trace of regret arose in Kakashi's heart. Sure enough, in the ninja school, there is still no one who can make him give his all. Then, it's time to put an end to this battle. Kakashi made up his mind and prepared to use the same trick again, using the instant body to rush through the fireball and quickly approach Obito to end this battle. But at this moment, the sense of crisis that inexplicably emerged from his subconscious made him alert all of a sudden. Did he miss something? Kakashi had this thought, but in the next moment he noticed something inconsistent that he had not noticed before. Chapter 165 Victory or Defeat. It was a sound. Unlike the silent fireballs before, this time the fireballs were accompanied by a huge rumble. The moment he realized this, Kakashi suddenly remembered the scene when Obito came here just now. The final scene was fixed on the blisters on his lips, as if he was hit by a lightning. A flash of lightning flashed through Kakashi's mind, connecting all the doubts together. Could it be, the fireball flying towards him was actually real? Although there were still some doubts in his heart, Kakashi had no time to think about it. Because the speed of the fireball was much faster than the ordinary great fireball technique, in the moment he hesitated, it was about to swallow him up. At the critical moment, Kakashi struggled to the left and barely avoided the whistling attack of that fireball. At the same time, after losing the cover of the fireball, Kakashi, who was still in the air, also saw Obito, who was half kneeling in the same place, obviously exhausted. Sure enough. So this is your trump card? The two previous fireball projections were just a prelude. In order to make myself careless and treat this real great fireball technique as a projection, and fall into the trap. After Kakashi dodged the fireball, he adjusted his body shape and prepared to rush towards Obito when he landed, not giving him any chance. It seems that this time it is really over. Looking at Obito's expression of grief not far away, Kakashi also breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. To be honest, thinking that he was almost hit by the real great fireball technique, Kakashi still feels a chill in his back and his whole body is cold. Even if a big fireball flew past him just now, he couldn't feel any temperature. Wait. A strong sense of disobedience emerged in Kakashi's heart again. Even if it was due to psychological effects, it was absolutely impossible for him not to feel a trace of temperature when such a big fireball flew past him. There seems to be only one possibility that can explain this phenomenon. Thinking of this, Kakashi turned his head as fast as possible. Then he saw a scene that made him unbelievable. A second figure of Obito actually emerged from the fireball and rushed towards him, who had just landed and was defenseless behind him. At this moment, Kakashi finally understood Obito's real tactics. It was fake, all fake. The fireball was fake, and the Obito who fell on the spot was also fake. The real Obito had long been hiding in the fireball, running behind him and attacking him from a blind spot. Moreover, Kakashi realized that the incredibly loud Great Fireball technique was not only to make him mistakenly believe that it was a real fireball, but also to cover up the movement of Obito, who was running quickly. From the very beginning of the silent fireball projection, was Obito paving the way for this moment. Finally waited for the opportunity that you, Mr. Xia Yan, mentioned. Obito, who flew out of the fireball, saw Kakashi's shocked expression for the first time, and his heart was filled with emotion. At the same time, his mind began to reflect on the last time the teacher Xia Yan explained tactics to him. Listen, Obito, in the sealing technique office, Xia Yan was tapping the whiteboard with a pointer to explain the tactical arrangements for this battle. According to the information I have collected, Kakashi's strength is probably much stronger than I thought. So if the initial wave of tactics does not succeed, then we would probably create one more chance at most. Obito, you should not have forgotten what I said. The characteristics of ninjas being strong in attack and weak in defense are destined to make them be defeated by opponents who are much weaker than themselves if they are not careful. So we just need to create such an opportunity and then seize it. Then even the genius Kakashi is not completely invincible. Teacher. Obito raised his hand excitedly. Sure enough, we still have to use the Great Fireball technique that I just learned to decide the outcome. Xia Yan showed a strange expression on his face. Use the Great Fireball technique to decide the winner. Isn't that just like Lady Summoned gambling, where the winner is decided before the game starts? No, at least Lady Summoned can win sometimes, and the Great Fireball technique. Teacher, I always feel that you have a lot of opinions about our Uchiha clan's Great Fireball technique. Obito said speechlessly, and didn't you, teacher, ask me to learn this technique as much as possible before the duel with Kakashi? This is just to give you a deep understanding of that Great Fireball technique and make the projection of the fireball more realistic. Xia Yan explained. In fact, the tactics of real and fake Great Fireball may have a good effect on ordinary ninjas. But for a fighting genius like Kakashi, it is still very likely to be discovered. Ah? Then teacher, what should we do? Obito realized that the trick he had practiced for so long was useless against Kakashi, and asked anxiously. Xia Yan smiled and said, don't worry, since he is likely to see through it, let's do the opposite and let him see through it. It's just that what he saw through is the illusion we created through the presence or absence of sound in various small details. After all, in that short moment, even a genius like Kakashi couldn't see through this nesting doll tactic all at once. So when the mystery is revealed and the unexpected gap is opened, the gap in strength between you and Kakashi will be narrowed to the limit. At the time, you only need to use your best attack, and the rest will be decided by the goddess of fate. And now, it's the time, the teacher said. Obito, who recalled the teachings of teacher Xia Yan, suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and his hands naturally formed the tiger seal. Yes, this is his best attack that he has practiced every day. 1000-year killing. Wait. Xia Yan, who was waiting to watch the show, suddenly widened his eyes. He wanted Obito to use his best attack, but he meant Obito's defeat of Homikazu's young eagle, not the 1000 years of death. However, it was too late. Obito had already rushed behind Kakashi, and the fingertips of his two swords were condensed with real chakra, just like he had practiced countless times on Kakashi's life-size doll, and he stacked somewhere accurately. At this time, Kakashi, who had realized what Obito wanted to do, was just as Obito wished, with bloodshot eyes and an unprecedented expression of shock and anger. At the same time, his right hand instantly grasped the short knife behind him. Kakashi. Obito. Amid the two people screaming, a dazzling white light flashed. In a rhythmic turbulence, Obito gradually regained consciousness in a daze. Then what caught his eyes was a head of white hair that was growing happily. This hair, why is it so familiar? It seems that in the whole Konoha, there is only one person whose hair grows so capriciously. Obito then realized that the one who was carrying him was actually Kakashi. Are you finally awake? Wait, don't move. Kakashi was interrupted by Obito, who was struggling to get down when he was halfway through his words. He said unhappily, you may have been seriously injured just now. You have to go to the infirmary for a checkup first. After hearing what Kakashi said, Obito felt a dull pain in his left ribs. At this time, Obito was fully awake and recalled the battle between him and Kakashi. He subconsciously wanted to ask who won, but from the fact that he was being carried to the infirmary by Kakashi, it was clear who won and who lost. So I still lost, Obito muttered subconsciously. For a moment, he didn't have much sense of reality. However, his gradually clearer memory made him recall the last white light. What a fast knife. Obviously in such an absolutely unfavorable situation, he was able to strike first and knock him out. Obito couldn't help but take a deep look at the back of Kakashi's head. Sure enough, this guy was really too foul. I didn't expect that after working hard for a semester, I still couldn't beat this guy. Obito felt a little uncomfortable for a moment. In order not to think about it temporarily, and to relieve the embarrassment of being carried by Kakashi, Obito asked casually, "Kakashi, why are your walking movements a little awkward?" Although he could only see the back of Kakashi's head, Obito still felt that Kakashi's face seemed to be black. After a long time, he heard Kakashi say in a vague voice, "It has nothing to do with you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 166 Farewell. In fact, on the way to the infirmary with the unconscious Obito on his back, Kakashi kept asking himself, he did win the sparring, but was it all worth it? The answer was obviously no. To be honest, if he could go back to before sparring with Obito, he would definitely choose to surrender directly, because at the end of the sparring, although he burst out his potential at a critical moment, he used the white fan short sword with a scabbard to twist and hit Obito's left rib. But he was still a step slower after all, and failed to completely stop Obito from using that crazy move, although it just rubbed against the outside and did not go in, but it still caused great harm to Kakashi's young heart. And this was the result after the teacher Xia Yan created a strange white barrier at the last moment to buffer Obito's attack. Otherwise, if he was hit by Obito's attack that he used all his strength, he would not dare to imagine the consequences. What made Kakashi even more speechless was that according to the teacher Xia Yan, he could have completely blocked Obito's attack. However, he still had to focus most of his energy on creating another barrier to block his last amazing sword. After all, although Obito's move would cause physical and mental injuries to people, his sword at the time was the one that could really kill people. So although the other party gave a high evaluation of his last sword, Kakashi was not happy at all, but fortunately, it seems that Obito was knocked away by the remaining force of his attack and fainted against the crooked tree, so he completely forgot the memory of the moment before he fainted. So he doesn't have to worry about Obito making fun of him for the time being. The only ones who know this secret that cannot be told to him and the teacher Xia Yan. But as a teacher, the other party should not tell such things everywhere. Kakashi can only hope so. There is no way he can't beat him. Obito, who just asked casually, did not notice Kakashi's strangeness, and continued to ask, "By the way, Kakashi, what about teacher Xia Yan?" Seeing that Obito did not continue to ask, Kakashi secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, "He asked me to send you to the infirmary, and then left." "Is that so?" Obito responded with a nod, and his mood seemed a little low. He couldn't help thinking, I don't know if teacher Xia Yan would be disappointed in him. After all, the teacher spent so much time and energy to train him, but he still lost to Kakashi. It's normal for the teacher to be disappointed. Although he signed a so-called unequal treaty with the teacher to get the teacher's guidance. But Obito still knows how insignificant his efforts are compared to what he has gained. So to be honest, he is now a little afraid to see teacher Xia Yan and other members of the research team, afraid to see their disappointed expressions, but Obito still suppressed this thought for the time being, because he suddenly thought of a very important question. "Wait, Kakashi, why are you still here?" He suddenly exclaimed, "What about the graduation exam?" Kakashi was startled by his loud voice and said speechlessly, "Of course it has already started." "What? Then what are you still doing here?" Obito's eyes suddenly widened and he began to struggle like a loach to get off. "Kakashi, don't worry about me, go take the exam quickly. Since I lost, I can't delay you from taking the graduation exam. You rush over now, maybe you can still make it. Don't give up the exam for me." Obito's frantic movement caused Kakashi below him to be injured, and his face suddenly became distorted. Fortunately, he was wearing a mask and his back was facing Obito, so he was not discovered. However, he still hurriedly explained in a bad mood, How could I give up the exam for a fool like you? Before sending you to the infirmary, I had already conjured a shadow clone to take the exam. Obito, who was still struggling, suddenly stopped and looked dazed. I didn't expect there would be such a thing. Thinking of his actions just now, Obito, who has always been thick-skinned, couldn't help but blush. And Kakashi didn't dare to provoke Obito again, worried that he would go crazy again. So for a while, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Both of them thought at the same time, why haven't we arrived at the infirmary yet? After a while, Obito's mood gradually calmed down. Just thinking about Kakashi's shadow clone taking the exam, he felt inexplicably empty in his heart. Because even if it was just a shadow clone, with Kakashi's strength, passing the exam was a short thing. This means that Kakashi will become a formal Konoha Genin from today. It also means that starting from tomorrow, he will leave the ninja school, and it will be difficult to see him in the future. Thinking of this, Obito really felt that he had really lost to Kakashi. In the end, he still couldn't stop him from leaving. After a moment of silence, Obito suddenly said, Kakashi, what's the matter? Congratulations on becoming a Genin. Kakashi was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he responded softly, thank you. Perhaps he felt that this was not in line with his style. Obito raised his voice and added, but Kakashi, don't be too proud. This time, I lost in our sparring as ninja school students. But don't worry, I will catch up with you soon and become a Genin. When the time comes, we will have another Genin duel, and I will definitely not lose to you. That's indeed a good suggestion, Kakashi said slowly, but by the time you graduate and become a Genin, I'm afraid I will have become a Chunin. Obito choked for a moment. Then he found that what Kakashi said was actually quite possible, and he couldn't refute it. So he could only say indignantly, then I will soon become a Chunin, and then, Kakashi interrupted. By then I may be a Genin. Damn, how is this possible? Obito glared at the back of Kakashi's head and said, since you said so, then fine, then I will become Hokage, and then send you to guard the toilet. Kakashi said lightly. Hehe, how can a fool like you become Hokage? Damn, who said that fools can't be Hokage? Wait, you deny that you were a fool? The two of them carried each other on their backs, bickering, and walked towards the infirmary. It seemed as if time had returned to the carefree time when school just started. However, it might be difficult to have such an opportunity in the future. Thinking of this, Kakashi decided to make persistent efforts and vent all the complaints about Obito that he cherished in his heart. However, at this moment, a drop of warm liquid dripped onto the back of his neck, instantly breaking up the work he had organized. He did not turn around, but said hesitantly, Obito, are you crying? Stupid Kakashi, how is that possible? Obito subconsciously denied, only to find that he did not know and his eyes had blurred. He hurriedly wiped his eyes secretly with his sleeve, only to find that the more he wiped, the more tears he cried. But Obito did not even know why he was crying. Was it because he was reluctant to see Kakashi, the bastard, leave? Or was it because he felt sorry for failing everyone's help and expectations? Or was it because he was unwilling to fail in the end after doing something with all his strength for the first time? Or perhaps, all of these reasons? After a slight daze, another tear fell onto the back of Kakashi's neck. Kakashi still didn't look back, but just complained again. How come you have such developed tear glands? Obito was still denying. I told you it's not tears. It's just not. Kakashi said in a somewhat dangerous tone. I'll give you a chance to say it again. Well, it's actually raining. Raining? Kakashi was speechless and subconsciously looked up at the sky. Then he saw a cloudless sky like a clear sapphire. Kakashi was a little dazed. Because he had forgotten how long he hadn't seen the blue sky like this. I always feel, the sky is so blue today. Kakashi wanted to express such emotion, but when he heard the suppressed sobbing on his back, the words he said became, indeed, it rained heavily today. Chapter 167 report. Soon after, the two came to the infirmary of the ninja school. Because Obito had fainted before, for safety reasons, the mature school nurse decided to give him a comprehensive physical examination. Kakashi, who had completed his mission, said goodbye to the two and left. But before leaving, the school nurse pulled him aside and secretly gave him an ointment. She also said with sympathy that it was pitiful for him to have hemorrhoids at such a young age. And judging from his walking movements, it should be very serious. Kakashi opened his mouth several times, but in the end he couldn't say anything to refute. So he could only leave the infirmary with a dark face in silence. But he still took the ointment. and Obito didn't run out of the infirmary until near noon, and ran towards the roof of the teaching building. Oh no, I clearly agreed to meet everyone on the roof to report the results of the duel with Kakashi. Everyone should be getting impatient waiting. I hope they don't misunderstand me as going to cry. Feeling uneasy, Obito quickly came to the stairwell on the top floor, pushed open the door to the roof and walked in. At the same time, he touched the back of his head as he had imagined before, forced a smile and said, "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Haha, I'm sorry I still lost, but halfway through, he realized that the roof in front of him was completely empty, without a single person. Obito's arm, which was touching the back of his head, froze. Did they wait too long and leave impatiently? Obito thought subconsciously. However, there was another possibility that he dared not think about in detail lingering in his heart. Could it be that everyone was disappointed in him, so they left without waiting for him? Thinking that teacher Xia Yan also left him to Kakashi and left on his own, Obito could not help but think about this possibility. Although Obito is usually carefree, he is actually a very sensitive guy. Since he was a child, he has been alienated by his clan members and most people in the village because he is an Uchiha who is not like an Uchiha. So after receiving special training from teacher Xia Yan, he gradually became friends with Akai, Ashuma and other members of the research team, and his relationship with Lin became closer. He really felt very happy. So no matter how difficult the content of the special training was, or how bad teacher Xia Yan's requirements were, he gritted his teeth and persisted, not only to defeat Kakashi, but also to continue the time with everyone. However, Obito only realized now. After losing to Kakashi, it seems that he has no reason to continue to receive special training. Even the activities of the research team, he originally joined through the back door, and it seems that he has no qualifications to stay there. Just like this empty rooftop, Obito's heart suddenly became empty again. Even he himself felt like a lonely ghost, with no place to stay. However, just as he lowered his head and was about to turn around and leave, an arm suddenly stretched out from the void in front of him and tightly grasped his wrist. This was Lin's hand. Obito recognized it subconsciously, and then looked in the direction of the arm. Then he saw that the empty scene on the rooftop just now gradually dissipated like a mirage, revealing the real scene hidden inside. In addition to Lin who was holding his hand, teacher Xia Yan, teacher Kushina, Akai, Ashuma, Home, and Ebisu were also smiling at him. In addition, there were many decorations on the rooftop at this time. There was a long table in the middle, and on the table were all kinds of delicious food, and even a big cake. Then, in Obito's astonished expression, everyone blessed him in unison. "Obito, happy birthday." Obito was confused for a long time before he slowly reacted. Yes, today is February 10th, it is really his birthday. But because of the challenge to Kakashi, he has completely forgotten about this kind of thing. I didn't expect that everyone still remembered it. Obito was overwhelmed with emotions. If he hadn't cried all his tears out before, he would have cried. But there was still a question: don't you blame me for failing to live up to your expectations? Obito hesitated for a few seconds, but finally mustered up the courage to ask. Unexpectedly, everyone looked a little strange when they heard it. In the end, Ashuma, who always spoke his mind, spoke first. "Obito, is there a possibility, that we never expected you to defeat Kakashi?" Obito's eyes widened when he heard that. And Home said unwillingly, "After all, Kakashi is a guy that even my father praises highly, saying that he is a genius who is better than me, so it is normal that you can't beat him, Obito." Ebisu also adjusted his sunglasses and said, "In fact, since Kakashi is going to graduate and become a genin today, the outcome is obvious. I heard from the teacher that you actually posed a considerable threat to him and made him use his full strength. To be honest, this is already amazing." Obito looked at them in disbelief. "Wait, didn't you say before that you have confidence in me and are waiting for my good news?" Ashuma said speechlessly. "Before you hadn't dueled with Kakashi, of course we had to choose good things to say. After all, the death row prisoners can also have a good meal before the execution." Obito couldn't help but take a few steps back and pointed at them with a trembling finger. For a moment, he couldn't find anything else to say except swearing. Then he looked at Kai and Lin with hopeful eyes. As the veteran members of the special training team that defeated Kakashi, they should have some confidence in themselves. Then he saw Kai coming over and patting his shoulder, saying in a voice that could not suppress his joy, "Obito, I'm also very sorry for your failure. But according to our previous agreement, Kakashi's first time and countless times in the future, all belong to me, Kai." As he said this, he also raised his thumb and pointed straight at himself, and then showed a blinding white smile. Obviously, he was happy that Kakashi's first time was not taken away by Obito. And Rin also put her hands together with an apologetic look and said sorry. As for Xia Yan on the side, he looked at them with a smile on his face, and from time to time slapped away Kushina's claws that stretched towards the food. Damn, so you all look at me like this. Obito gritted his teeth in anger, and felt that the touch just now is instantly swept away. Except for Rin, everyone else is unforgivable. However, everyone seemed to have not noticed his mood, and surrounded him to ask about the details of his battle with Kakashi. Hong asked curiously, "Did Kakashi use illusion? What was the effect?" Ashuma asked eagerly, "Obito, have you seen White Fan's swordsmanship? Is it as powerful as my 35 million Ryo swordsmanship?" Ebisu pressed for details. The teacher was very vague about your final moves, so Obito, what moves did you use? Listening to everyone's chattering questions, Obito, who was originally still angry, began to act as a storyteller again. "I really can't do anything about you." Obito skillfully found a chair, stood on it, cleared his throat and said, "Since you were asking sincerely, I will mercifully tell you." However, just as he was about to tell the story of the director's cut of Obito vs. Kakashi, Dawn of Justice, the door to the rooftop was opened again, attracting everyone's attention. Obito subconsciously looked over, and was surprised to see that the person who appeared at the door of the rooftop was actually Kakashi, whom he thought he wouldn't see for a long time. Chapter 168 Kakashi joins? Why did Kakashi appear here? Obito's eyes widened as he stared blankly at Kakashi, who appeared at the door of the rooftop. Because he really couldn't think of any reason why Kakashi would appear here. Of course, more importantly, he had cried on his back in the morning, and now the last person he wanted to see in the world was this guy. Although Kakashi was very considerate and didn't expose him at the time, he obviously knew about it. Thinking of his cowardly side being seen by the hated Kakashi, Obito felt so embarrassed that he could dig out a 3-bedroom and 1 living room on the ground with his feet. However, he thought that it would be difficult to meet Kakashi in the future, and time would dilute everything, so he barely suppressed this embarrassment in his heart. He even planned to take a detour if he met Kakashi on the road in the future, and wait until he could treat this matter as a joke before saying hello to Kakashi. For example, after Kakashi died on the mission, he would look back on the past with him in front of the memorial, but he never expected that Kakashi would appear in front of him again within a few hours of saying goodbye. This was too fast. How could he cope with this? And at this moment, Obito suddenly thought of a terrible possibility, which could explain why Kakashi was here now. Could it be that Kakashi was so considerate before, just to publicly punish him in front of everyone? When Obito thought that everyone would soon know that he cried after losing to Kakashi, he was so anxious that goosebumps appeared all over his body. No. This must not happen. Kakashi, come with me, I'll show you a big treasure. In order to maintain his image, which was actually not much left, Obito quickly walked in front of Kakashi, and made up an excuse to drag Kakashi to the stairwell to ask him clearly and find out why he was here. However, to his surprise, Kakashi didn't bother to pay attention to him at all. He shivered and bypassed his interception, and even had time to roll his eyes at him in the middle. Obito, who had missed his target, felt nervous and turned around quickly, only to find that Kakashi had walked straight to teacher Xia Yan. Kakashi was actually looking for teacher Xia Yan? What is their relationship? Obito was confused. At this time, Xia Yan looked at Kakashi, who was walking in front of him, and smiled kindly. He first skillfully knocked away Kushina's claws that were reaching for the food on the table, and then smiled at Kakashi. "Kakashi-san, it seems that you have made a decision." Kakashi struggled a little, and then nodded slowly. "Teacher Xia Yan, please let me join this research team." "As you wish." Xia Yan smiled, and then clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention. After everyone looked over, he said loudly, "Announcer, good news, from today on, Kakashi-san is a member of our sealing technique research team." Everyone applauded to welcome him. Clap clap clap. Although a little surprised, the members of the research team quickly applauded and looked at Kakashi with curious eyes. Kakashi still had a faint expression, just nodded to everyone, as a greeting. Only Obito, who was still standing at the entrance of the rooftop, looked completely dumbfounded. Wait, After Obito's brain had crashed and restarted several times, he finally came back to his senses. However, he still couldn't understand what was happening in front of him, so he ran directly to Xia Yan, pointed at Kakashi and asked, "Teacher, Kakashi has already graduated, Why can he still be a member of the research team? Xia Yan pretended to be silent for a while, and then he suddenly realized. Oh, by the way, I forgot that you didn't know about that, Obito. Under Obito's puzzled gaze, he began to explain with a smile. As a member of the research team, Obito, you should also know that our ninja school will carry out a series of curriculum reforms starting from the next school year. The simplified version of the radio gymnastics that you have been practicing and testing will also be promoted to the entire school. In addition to this, there are various after-school training classes, and even the original courses will gradually introduce more room teaching aids to improve the quality of teaching. It is not difficult to imagine that the average level of students in the ninja school will make a leap forward in the future. And this does not count my sealing technique class. In the next school year, I will also start teaching projection techniques formally. Although the curriculum reform will benefit future students a lot, it is not very friendly to students who graduated in recent years. Because they who have taken the old-style courses are likely to be surpassed by a new batch of students who have taken the new courses at the end of the next school year. So after being reminded by several 6th grade students who took the sealing technique, I also discussed this issue with Master Waito several times. The solution we finally came up with is that some of the school's elective courses will also be open to students after graduation. They can come to school to attend classes during the corresponding courses, or study on their own through textbooks, and do tasks as before, which won't waste too much time. If the response is good, some courses will also offer night classes, which will make it easier for them to arrange their time. Xia Yan's idea is actually similar to the adult education he had in his previous life. After all, the average Konoha ninja graduated from elementary school and started working to earn money at a young age. Therefore, compared to full-time study, adult education with a more flexible schedule seems to be more suitable for these flexible employees. Seeing Obito's confused look, Xia Yan also felt that he seemed to have gone too far, and shook his head and smiled. Our sealing technique class is also an elective course, so even if Kakashi graduates, he is still eligible to take this course. It just so happens that after practicing with you, Obito, he seems to be very interested in this research group that can make your strength soar, so I invited him to join. Kakashi pursed his lips when he heard this, but did not refute. Obito, who was not very smart, also understood what Xia Yan meant at this time, and began to look back and forth at the two of them with an unbelievable look. He never thought that when he was unconscious, Kakashi actually hooked up with Xia Yan. Obviously I came here first, I didn't expect that Kakashi would be so unkind. He looked deeply at Kakashi, who was still expressionless. You know, this research group is his biggest reliance in just one semester, from the last to the genius in everyone's eyes. If Kakashi also joins the research team, then his advantage in this area will be eliminated, and the gap between him and Kakashi will return to the same level as before. Kakashi, where is your dignity as a genius? Why do you copy my own path like a scholar? Unfortunately, Obito didn't know that if the original plot develops, Kakashi will be famous in the ninja world as a copy ninja in the future, and copying is simply a common thing for him. Even the Sharingan, which is the biggest reliance of Kakashi for copying, was given to him by Obito himself. In addition to discovering that his biggest advantage over Kakashi is gone, Obito also realized a bigger problem. Since Kakashi has decided to take the sealing technique class and participate in the activities of the research team, even though Kakashi has become a ninja and is no longer his classmate, he can still see him in the sealing technique class and the activities of the research team. Rounding it off, wow! This is no different from before. Chapter 169 The Tilt of the Scales. Obito couldn't help but roar in his heart. What was the purpose of the special training he had done this semester to defeat Kakashi? And the teacher knew that Kakashi might still appear in the ninja school, but he didn't tell him at all. Obito didn't believe that the teacher forgot to tell him. It was obvious that he wanted to watch his show. After all, he actually knew from the beginning that teacher Xia Yan was actually a black-bellied guy, and judging from the fact that everyone had a mediocre reaction after listening to teacher Xia Yan's words, they should have known about this a long time ago. Is he the only one who didn't know? Xia Yan seemed to see what Obito was thinking, patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. Okay, everyone didn't tell you in advance, in fact, to avoid you from having a fluke mentality, so that you can prepare for the battle with all your strength. And what you learned in the special training is not useless, they will become nutrients for your future growth, and it is not in vain. Obito had to admit in his heart that what the teacher said made sense, but the real problem is not this. You know, I thought I wouldn't see Kakashi again for a long time, so I don't have to worry about being laughed at by him for crying. As a result, teacher Xia Yan actually told him now that he would still see Kakashi often in the future. Is he sure he is not kidding him? Thinking of this, Obito could not help but secretly glance at Kakashi, who was not far away. Although the other party still had a blank expression, Obito always felt that the corners of his mouth under the mask seemed to be slightly raised, as if he was laughing at him. Thinking of how Kakashi, who had already grasped his handle, would use this to make fun of him in the future, Obito felt that he was not good at all. Fortunately, at this time, he suddenly had an idea and looked up at Xia Yan again. No, Teacher Xia Yan. Teacher, you are so unfair to other students who want to join the sealing technique group. Obito said with a look of defending injustice. Obviously, they can only wait until the next school year to take the assessment to join the research group. Why can Kakashi, who has not even taken the sealing technique class and even knows nothing about sealing technique, join directly? Xia Yan was a little speechless when he heard this. Only you who got into the research group through the back door are not qualified to say this. However, for the sake of his own image, Xia Yan still patiently explained. What you said makes sense, Obito, but you were wrong in one aspect. In Obito's puzzled eyes, Xia Yan continued. It is true that Kakashi did not take the sealing technique course, but he is not completely ignorant of sealing technique as you said. In fact, before you woke up, I had already conducted a simple assessment and found that Kakashi had learned the course content of our semester very well through self-study, and even started to study for the next school year. Although he has some deviations in his understanding of some knowledge because he is self-taught, and some of the content in the textbook is outdated, but if he is allowed to take the final exam in a few days, he will probably be able to get a score in the top 20. Speaking of which, this is also an interesting proposal, Xia Yan said with a smile. Why don't you let Kakashi take the exam as well and see who of you two has better grades? No need, Teacher Xia Yan. This is too much of a bullying of Kakashi, who was a self-taught person. Obito forced a smile and refused, but at the same time he was roaring in his heart. Oh my god, top 20, is Kakashi still a human? Although Obito has learned the projection technique, he actually learned it by relying on his body memory, so he is still a mess in the theory of sealing techniques. To be honest, he felt that he had performed exceptionally well to be in the top 50 inches this final exam. Then Xia Yan continued. So in theory, the research group assessment to be held next school year should not be difficult for him. Plus, this semester is almost over, and Kakashi will graduate and start a busy ninja life. In order to let him catch up with your progress as soon as possible and not waste the next 2 months of summer vacation, I will let him join our research group in advance. But Obito's concerns are not unreasonable. Xia Yan pondered for a moment and turned his head to look at Kakashi and said, for the sake of funness, Kakashi-san, you'd better participate in the assessment next school year. I understand. Kakashi nodded indifferently. By the way, Xia Yan suddenly looked around at everyone again, and said with a smile, why don't you all take part in the test together, as a test of your learning results during this period? I'll state in advance that if you don't pass, you won't be able to participate in the activities of the research group next school year, but if you also participate, then perhaps the content of the test will be a little more difficult. The members of the research group immediately groaned. Although they have been ahead of the whole class in the sealing technique after a semester of research group study. But it's better to be safe than sorry. If you accidentally fail, wouldn't you lose the opportunity to participate in the research group and see all kinds of new things in advance? So everyone glared at Obito at the same time. Lin was no exception. After all, if it weren't for Obito's talkativeness, the teacher wouldn't have the sudden idea of testing them. Knowing that he had gotten into trouble again, Obito quickly looked at Teacher Xia Yan with pitiful eyes, hoping that he would take back his order. However, Xia Yan just patted him on the shoulder and said, Obito, you should worry about yourself first. After all, with your current grades, it's really a bit difficult to pass the test. What do I have to participate to? Obito pointed at himself with his index finger in surprise, and then he reacted. That's right, he and Kakashi have finished sparring, and the deal with the teacher has naturally ended, and there is no reason to stay in the research group. This also means that if he fails the assessment next semester, he will really be kicked out of the research group. So this is no longer a question of whether Kakashi will join the research group, but a question of whether he can still stay in the research group. Realizing this, Obito was immediately like a bereaved parent, and he no longer cared about Kakashi's affairs. Humph, Obito is really a fool. Kakashi, who had been watching the show on the side, said in his heart. Obito didn't realize that this was just a premeditated method by Xia Yan teacher to motivate him to work hard. Obviously, the teacher also saw that if Obito didn't have a clear and urgent goal, he would easily relax. That's why he immediately gave Obito a goal after they spot. However, it seems that this teacher not only has a high level of teaching, but also has a good grasp of student psychology. Kakashi nodded slightly, becoming more and more satisfied with his decision to join this research group. It seems that he should gain a lot of useful things here. To be honest, after Obito fainted, he wanted to refuse the invitation from teacher Xia Yan. Although he was indeed very interested in the reason for Obito's rapid progress, a large part of the reason he left the ninja school was to end the time of playing Ninja House with other classmates. Because he found that he had clearly decided to implement the ninja code and abandon all emotions, but in school life, his heart would involuntarily soften. Sometimes he even thought, maybe that man's choice was the right one. In order to avoid this weak thought from appearing again, he chose to graduate so early. Even accepting Obito's challenge before the graduation exam was also at the idea of severing this bad relationship. However, on the way to the infirmary with Obito on his back, his thoughts shifted a little. Although it was only a trivial change, it was enough to be the last straw to tip the balance in his heart to the other side. That's why he came to the rooftop of the teaching building and chose to accept the invitation of teacher Xia Yan. But he kept telling himself in his heart, he didn't change his mind because of Obito. Well, it was indeed related to Obito. It was just because Obito's growth made him feel a little threatened, and he was worried that if he didn't meet a good teacher when he was divided into classes, he might really be surpassed by that idiot. So to be on the safe side, he joined this research group. It's definitely not because he couldn't bear to leave Obito or something. Absolutely not. Kakashi kept emphasizing in his heart, and at the same time secretly reminding himself. He joined this research group to become stronger, and he couldn't be softened by these guys. Even if Kakashi died and jumped off from here, he would not become friends with these people. However, the members of the research team were obviously not scared away by his stinky face that kept strangers away. Instead, they all gathered around him to talk. After all, whether it was his sparring with Obito or his identity as the youngest genin, they were very interested. Kakashi, how difficult is the graduation exam? Is it similar to the final exam? This was naturally a question from the senior Ebisu. Home was eager to try and said, I heard that you can also do illusions, Kakashi. How about we learn some illusions? Ashuma was a little annoyed when he saw Home was so interested in Kakashi. He pointed at the short knife behind Kakashi and said proudly, I heard that your white fang short knife is also a shaker knife. I happen to have 2 of them. How much is yours worth? Lin said to Kakashi with joy, Kakashi, I'm glad you can join us. If you don't understand anything about sealing techniques, you can always ask me for help. In the end, of course, the blue young beast Akai was indispensable. He gave a thumbs up and said excitedly, Kakashi, don't forget that I am your #1 rival. While we had the opportunity now, why don't we have a passionate duel under the sunset? Kakashi subconsciously glanced at the sky and confirmed that it was only noon. As expected, the real difficulty in learning something in this research group is this group of guys. Kakashi made a mental judgment and sighed secretly, and began to feel a headache. Chapter 170 Rewards. Seeing that Obito had nothing to say, Xia Yan also announced that Obito's birthday party officially began, so in the following time, everyone began to follow that process to celebrate Obito's birthday. Singing birthday songs, making wishes, blowing candles, sharing cakes, giving gifts. It was the first time that Obito had so many people celebrating his birthday, so he temporarily forgot about those unpleasant things and was in a better mood. The only thing that made him regretful was that he had clearly made a wish for Kakashi to get out immediately, but the guy still swaggered in front of him. Sure enough, fairy tales are all lies. And Obito's good mood did not last too long, because after the birthday process was over, everyone gathered around Kakashi and talked to him. Obviously, compared to the stupid Obito they were familiar with, the handsome, powerful and mysterious Kakashi seemed more attractive. So although he was the protagonist of this birthday party, Obito was left out and could only look at Kakashi surrounded by everyone with resentment, and his heart was itching with anger. How can it be repaired? Kakashi didn't just imitate me to join the research group, but he also wanted to steal my friends away. He wanted to replace him in the research group. It can't be considered a copy, but a possession. Obito was getting more and more angry, but soon found that he seemed to be powerless. After all, he was not sure whether he could stay in the research group next school year, and now he really didn't dare to make trouble and conflict with Kakashi. After all, from the fact that the teacher made an exception and let Kakashi join the research group early, it can be seen that he admired the bastard very much. Damn, is it because they all have white hair? Obito muttered in his heart, thinking about whether to dye his hair white, and Kakashi, who was surrounded by everyone, was not as happy as Obito imagined. It should be said that he, who aims to become a real ninja, actually hopes to be less noticeable. Even he has been wearing a mask since he was a child for this reason. In fact, if possible, he also wants to exchange treatment with Obito. Thinking of this, Kakashi couldn't help but look in the direction of Obito. So in the next moment, their eyes collided with each other. As a result, both of them were surprised to notice the envy of themselves in each other's eyes. Is this guy an idiot? What am I envious of now? The two complained in their hearts at the same time, and then from the slightly surprised look of the other, they noticed their own loss of composure, and turned their eyes away at the same time, turning their heads and thinking in their hearts. HMPH, a smart imitator. Heh, a crybaby. The amazing synchronization rate made Xia Yan, who was eating melon seeds and watching the show, start to worry about Lin. After everyone had eaten and drunk enough, this simple birthday party was also coming to an end. So Xia Yan also snapped his fingers casually, and the long table and the food disappeared. Everyone was accustomed to this scene, and had no reaction to the teacher's superb use of the storage technique. Kakashi, on the other hand, saw it for the first time and was slightly surprised. However, judging from everyone's calm expressions, this should be a basic operation of teacher Xia Yan, so he did not show it. Then Xia Yan clapped his hands again, and when everyone quieted down, he said, "You all know that the final exam will be in a few days. So starting from tomorrow, the activities of the research group will be temporarily suspended. That is to say, now is the last time for our research group members to get together this semester. So taking this opportunity, I will also fulfill the promise I made before." The little ninjas were slightly stunned after hearing Xia Yan's words, and for a moment they couldn't remember what the teacher was talking about. But soon, everyone began to recall that the teacher seemed to have said that in order to encourage them to study, he would give a special reward to the best students at the end of the semester. Thinking of the reward that the teacher had mentioned as an example, everyone looked at teacher Xia Yan with expectant eyes. Only Obito was unhappy because Kakashi stole the limelight on his birthday party, and he didn't listen seriously for a while. Kakashi was a newcomer and had no idea what it was. Seeing that everyone had remembered, Xia Yan smiled and said, "To be honest, everyone's performance was very good and provided me with a lot of valuable data. For example, the radio gymnastics and projection techniques that will be popularized in the ninja school next school year are all your contributions. So here, I have to express my gratitude to you." "Thank you." Xia Yan nodded to them. "Teacher Xia Yan, we should be the ones to say thank you, because we have gained much more than we have paid in the research group." Lin stepped forward and looked at teacher Xia Yan and teacher Kushina with gratitude. To be honest, she still couldn't believe that she, whose parents were ordinary people, could actually beat many children born in the ninja clan in actual combat. Obviously, without the training of teacher Xia Yan, she would never have been able to do it. The other little ninjas also echoed Lin's words and thanked teacher Xia Yan for their leaps and bounds in this semester. Xia Yan waved his hand and said, "With the hard work and sweat you put in, it is normal to be able to make such rapid progress. And I just fulfilled my responsibility as a teacher and pointed out the direction for you to move forward. Just like I found my own direction from the sealing technique textbook written by Mito teacher, so if you really think that I teach well, then when you were a teacher or in charge of a class in the future, teach every child seriously just like I taught you. After all, the inheritance of generations of masters and apprentices is the best embodiment of the will of fire, isn't it?" Everyone nodded thoughtfully, daydreaming about what it would be like to become a teacher. Only Kakashi was a little strange. Why did Xia Yan teacher keep looking at him when he said these words? Then Xia Yan shook his head and laughed. "But it seems too early to tell you this now. Then let's get back to the point. Now it's time to announce the name of the winner." Everyone began to get nervous after hearing this, and their fists were clenched tightly. Even Kakashi, who had nothing to do with it, was a little curious about what kind of reward made them so excited. Then, after a long pause that deliberately created suspense, Xia Yan slowly said, "Ashuma, Mom. I have to go." As soon as Ashuma heard teacher Xia Yan call his name, he jumped up with joy and strode forward excitedly. However, before he took a few steps, he felt a little unconfident and looked at Xia Yan with suspicion. "Teacher, you are not giving me the reward because my father is the Hokage. After all, he himself knew that in this research group, in terms of hard work, talent, and relationship with the teacher, he was not ranked. So he would unconsciously think of this possibility. Xia Yan rolled his eyes and said, "No, actually I haven't finished yet. I just want you to get out of the way and let Obito come up." Chapter 171 Ninja Sword. Nani. Ashuma was petrified and began to doubt his life. He didn't expect that he would lose to the guy Obito. Okay, this is just a joke. Seeing Ashuma's shock, Xia Yan stopped teasing him and said with a smile, "Actually, what I really wanted to say is, Ashuma, Obito, Rin, Hone, Ebisu, Guy, because I still can't choose the best one among you, so I decided to give each of you a reward." This time, the little ninjas didn't get happy immediately, but stared at Xia Yan's damn mouth. After making sure that there would be no more reversals, they finally cheered with relief. Great. Ashuma, who was no longer petrified, was not in the mood to complain about Xia Yan's bad taste. He looked up with hope and said, "Teacher, does this mean that we can finally get a battlesuit like you?" Obito, Ebisu and Kai also looked at him expectantly. Xia Yan nodded slightly and said, "Of course." Great. The boys cheered again. However, the two girls reacted calmly, with a blank expression on their faces. Kakashi, who had just joined the research team, became more and more curious. After all, from the name battlesuit, it is known that it should be a piece of equipment that can be used in battle. Although he didn't know much about Teacher Xia Yan, Kakashi also knew from Obito's usual boasting about Teacher Xia Yan that he had invented many useful room creations. So he was also very much looking forward to this battlesuit that made the boys ecstatic. So in the boys' impatient eyes, Xia Yan snapped his fingers again. With a bang, after the white smoke dissipated, what made everyone a little confused was that what Teacher Xia Yan was holding in his hand was not the clothes they imagined, but a ninja sword with a somewhat strange shape. This ninja sword is not long, probably only the length of 2 kunai, and the mirror-like blade is cold and looks extremely sharp. However, for Ashuma, who has 2 chakra swords, this ninja sword can only be regarded as ordinary stuff. So he pulled up his pants and asked Xia Yan on behalf of everyone, "Did you accidentally take the wrong thing?" Xia Yan showed an unfathomable smile and said, "Of course not. By the way, let Ashuma be responsible for demonstrating to everyone how to use this ninja sword." For some reason, Ashuma suddenly had a bad premonition, but when he saw that smiling face of Teacher Xia Yan, he knew that he had no room to refuse. So under everyone's curious eyes, he was pulled aside by Teacher Xia Yan, and explained to him how to use this ninja sword. Unexpectedly, as he listened, his eyes gradually brightened up, and then he looked at Xia Yan with admiration. It is really worthy of Xia Yan, who can create keening cards, to be able to think of such a cool and interesting use. Now, Home will definitely be fascinated by me. Ashuma couldn't help but daydream. After the others waited for a while, Xia Yan, who was smiling mysteriously, and Ashuma, who was holding a ninja sword and looked confident, came back. Everyone's curiosity has reached the extreme, even the girls can't wait to see what tricks Teacher Xia Yan has. So with Xia Yan's nod, Ashuma walked a few steps to the side, and then faced everyone, imitating Teacher Xia Yan's usual appearance, revealing a wicked and domineering smile. In everyone's somewhat speechless attention, Ashuma held a ninja sword in his right hand, took out a strangely shaped red shuriken with his left hand, and made a self-proclaimed cool move. Red Ninja Shuriken. At the same time, an excited male voice that the research team members were very familiar with sounded beside him. Obviously, the voiceover dubbing this time was still done by Mighty Dai. Ashuma held the ninja sword and made a sword flower, and then took advantage of the situation to install the round hole in the middle of the red shuriken on the special scimitar of the ninja sword with a clang, fitting perfectly. Then he used his left hand to press a button on the blade with the word change written on it. The transformation. The voiceover appeared again, and then a rhythmic music began to sound. Ninja, ninja, ninja. Ninja, ninja, ninja. Just when everyone was shocked by this inexplicable brainwashing music, Ashuma once again made a sword flower, held the ninja sword across his chest and said coldly, "Shuriken transformation." At the same time, the shuriken on the hilt began to spin rapidly under the manipulation of his left hand. Red is also a ninja. A shuriken phantom emitting dazzling light burst out from the ninja sword, covering Ashuma all at once, and then turned into a red-tied combat suit to wrap his body. Immediately afterwards, a red shuriken phantom circled the field and finally flew in front of Ashuma, turning into a red helmet with a large shuriken on the front, tightly wrapping Ashuma's head. Finally, Ashuma jumped up and did a mid-air spin in the background of the scroll with the sun emblem, then half knelt on the ground and raised his head and said in a deep voice, "The violet sky is clear, the red ninja." Wow! Both boys and girls were stunned by Ashuma's fierce operation and showed stunned expressions. Of course, some people were speechless, but for the little boys under 10 years old in the research group, Ashuma's second-year transformation action completely hit their hearts. It was simply the coolest thing they had ever seen. This made them all sigh. It turns out that only boys understand boys. Teacher Xia Yan has never disappointed them in this regard. After Ashuma stood up triumphantly, Obito, Kai and Ebisu all came forward and looked up and down at his battlesuit, and even directly experienced the touch of the battlesuit. "Who is it? Who is touching my butt?" When Ashuma was annoyed by their touching and was ready to chop him with a knife, they stopped with satisfaction. It is not difficult to see that although the texture of this battlesuit is not as good as the teacher's battlesuit, it is countless times better than the texture of the 3 pieces bought at the stall for 100 taels. At the same time, the shape of this battlesuit is impeccable, at least it is not only one color. And the upper body of the battlesuit also refers to the design of kimono, which adds a lot of layering to the monotonous tights. It seems that if teacher Xia Yan really wants to make it, he can still make this tights very handsome. The previous single-color tight pajamas seem to be the teacher's bad taste. Everyone can't help but think so, of course, except for that guy. Teacher, what about ours?" After inspecting the goods, Obito and the others were naturally too lazy to look at Ashuma's arrogant look, and hurried to Xia Yan and asked impatiently. Xia Yan smiled slightly, and the sound of snapping fingers rang out again. Bang 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 bang, looking at the children holding ninja swords and shuriken happily looking for Ashuma to learn how to transform, Xia Yan showed a satisfied smile. It seems that the boys are very satisfied with this reward. In fact, he originally planned to prepare Robin or Batgirl suits for these little guys, just to match his own Batsuit, to complete the assembly of the Bat family in the ninja world. However, the green scale shorts in the Robin suit were really unbearable for him. He felt that if the children really wore them, his reputation would be seriously damaged. It just so happened that he had an inspiration after seeing Ashuma's shape knife recently, and planned to make a multifunctional ninja sword for himself. So in order to practice, he imitated the appearance of the shuriken team that he saw when he was a child in his previous life, and made a ninja sword that could be used for transformation for each student. It's a pity that his labor results were not recognized by everyone. He looked at the 2 ninja swords that had not been taken away in his hand, and smiled at Hong and Lin who were not far away. "You two don't have to be polite, come and try it." No, teacher, this is not a question of being polite or not. The 2 little girls looked embarrassed. After all, although this battlesuit is much better than the previous one, it still does not meet their aesthetic taste. To be honest, the only design of this battlesuit that they agree with is the helmet. It can not only make people unable to recognize them, but also prevent their shameful expressions from being discovered. So even Lin, who always listens to the teacher, looks reluctant. And Hong directly expressed her dissatisfaction. "Teacher, didn't you say that the reward for us girls was to watch the second part of the Mako and the Dog Demon?" Lin also reacted and nodded repeatedly to show her agreement. Xia Yan's face froze, and he was a little annoyed that Hong still remembered this matter. Because he has too much research work recently, he has no time to make the big cake he drew for the girls. He thought that he should be able to pass the test by taking out such a cool transformation ninja sword, but he didn't expect that they still remembered this matter. The 2 girls saw the expression of teacher Xia Yan, and they understood it all at once, and immediately looked at teacher Xia Yan angrily. Even Kashina, who was watching the show on the side, looked disappointed. All right. Xia Yan raised his hands in surrender. "This time it is indeed me who broke my promise. But I can tell you a piece of news. One of the important activities of our research group next semester is to make a movie together using projection technology. You can also participate in it then. It should be more interesting to turn fiction into reality with your own hands than to read stories." Upon hearing this, Hong and Lin also forgot about being let down by teacher Xia Yan. They were very interested in making a movie by themselves and began to ask about various details. Xia Yan was relieved to see this. Sure enough, the best way to make people forget a piece of pie is to draw a bigger pie, because although he has always had the idea of making a movie, he is still in the state of creating a new folder and has not made much progress. But looking at the excitement of the two little girls, Xia Yan also knew that this matter had to be put on the agenda. Chapter 172 Shuriken Squadron Ninja, 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 Ninja. With the brainwashing BGM, colorful lights flashed from time to time on the rooftop of the teaching building. In the center of the rooftop, several little boys were holding a ninja sword and posing in various middle school poses, constantly transforming and untransforming, competing to see whose transformation moves were cooler. They looked no different from the children who played with toys in Xia Yan's previous life. Except that what they held in their hands were not toys, but sharp ninja swords, and their transformations were really able to transform. Kashina, who was very playful, had already come over and acted as a referee, commenting on their transformation moves in a very professional manner. The two little girls, Lin and Hong, were still surrounding Xia Yan at this time, chattering about various details of filming. Teacher, what is the story of the movie we're going to make? Actually, we already have several drafts of the script, but I haven't made a decision yet. Then teacher, will this movie be shown in the village cinema in the future? Of course. If the response is good, maybe this will become a regular activity of our research group every school year, and it can also generate income for the school. Then teacher, please stop for a moment. Xia Yan was originally watching the boys' awkward dance happily while answering the girls' questions casually. As a result, he came to his senses and found that under the questioning of Hong and Lin, he seemed to have made the pie of making a movie bigger and bigger. Because he was a little worried that he would not be able to make it round in the future, he quickly waved his hand to interrupt their questions. These things can't be explained in a short time. Let's start discussing them seriously next school year. Xia Yan said perfunctorily. Seeing that the two wanted to ask more questions, he quickly changed the subject and pointed to the boys not far away and said, "Look how happy they are. Why don't you two go over and try it, Hong and Lin?" As he said that, he took out the two ninja swords again and handed them to them. Lin and Hong looked at the ninja swords in front of them and took 2 steps back involuntarily, and then looked at each other helplessly. Because the reason why they pestered the teacher to ask questions, in addition to being really interested in the movie, they also wanted to avoid the teacher from mentioning it again. But it seems that it obviously didn't work. Alas. Why does teacher Xia Yan always find ways to make everyone wear such strange tights? Obviously, they just mastered the practice of radio gymnastics not long ago, and can do the whole set of movements by themselves without copying a guy, and finally got rid of the tights that made them hate so much. They even decided to regard this unbearable experience as a black history, as if it had never happened. As a result, only a few days later, teacher Xia Yan actually started to recommend tights in various ways, even if this new tights looks a lot more upscale, but it is still a tights after all. For the sake of their own aesthetics, both of them could only decline the teacher's recommendation. First, Hong forced a smile and said, "Teacher Xia Yan, in fact, we are already very satisfied with knowing about the filming, so we appreciate your kindness, Teacher Xia Yan." Lin also nodded like a chicken pecking at rice to express her agreement. "Are you sure?" Xia Yan immediately showed a somewhat strange smile. "That's a pity. After all, I have said before that as the first batch of students learning radio gymnastics, you will shoulder the responsibility of copying the movements to other students and spreading this set of exercises in the next semester. If you wear these battle clothes at the time, it should be easier to distinguish from other students." When the two little girls heard this, they were stunned as if they had been struck by a bolt from the blue, and looked at each other. Only then did they remember that the teacher seemed to have said this, but they had already forgotten it completely. Doesn't this mean that their fate with this tights is far from over? And this time they have to wear them in public? What kind of strange punishment game is this? However, they no longer have time to think about it, because teacher Xia Yan has already started to take back the ninja sword he handed over, and said thoughtfully, "It seems that you should like the previous training suit more, no?" The two girls wailed and hurriedly stepped forward to snatch the ninja sword from teacher Xia Yan's hand, and held it tightly in their arms, fearing that the teacher would take it back. After all, compared to the ugly tights before, this somewhat strange battle suit suddenly became more beautiful. The two people who felt that their aesthetics were about to be distorted by teacher Xia Yan kept comforting themselves in their hearts. At least, this thing also comes with a helmet, so people won't see their shameful expressions. Looking at the backs of the two little girls who were lost and aggrieved, holding the ninja swords and walking towards the boys, Xia Yan's face was full of evil smiles. "Forgive me, Lin, Hong. Because if you two girls are missing, this Shuriken team will be incomplete. This is completely unbearable for Xia Yan, who pursues his completion. Then he stroked his chin and watched Lin and Hong, who looked helpless, complete their transformations under the guidance of their respective licking dogs. So far, this shuriken team finally has 6 members. They are Red Ninja Saratobi Ashuma, Blue Ninja Uchiha Obito, Yellow Ninja Ebisu, Peach Ninja Yui Kyorane, White Ninja Noharlin, Green Ninja Might Guy. In this way, now only the last star ninja has not been in place. Thinking of this, Xia Yan couldn't help but cast his eyes on Kakashi, who was standing beside him. Obviously, he had already been chosen. Kakashi, who didn't know that he had been targeted, was still staring at the students who were playing the transformation game. Although he didn't understand, he was shocked. Because he really didn't expect that the battle clothes awarded by Xia Yan teacher would be like this. If you say this is not a battle suit, Kakashi found from observation that these clothes are both close-fitting and flexible, and will not hinder the body from performing various movements. At the same time, from Ashuma's direct attempt to use the ninja sword to scratch the clothes, but only a white mark was left, it is obvious that the defense of this clothes is also very good, and it is very suitable for wearing in battle. But if you say this is a battle suit, this clothes is so damn fancy. Whether it is the brainwashing background sound, the exaggerated transformation special effects, or the overly conspicuous dress, it is completely unsuitable to be used as a ninja combat uniform. What Kakashi can't stand the most is the annoying transformation speed. It always feels that the time they take to transform is enough to be killed by the enemy more than a dozen times. Unless the enemies were all idiots who would not attack them while they were transforming, he really couldn't think of any use for these battle suits. So Kakashi could only equate these clothes with the keening cards, and regard them as toys used by teacher Xia Yan to improve students' interest in learning. As a genin who could already stand on his own, he naturally disdained this so-called battle suit that looked like a child's toy. Although he thought so rationally, in fact, his eyes could not help but continue to glance at Obito and the others who were playing the transformation game, and he didn't move away for a moment. After all, even if he was already a genin, he was just a little boy who was not even 6 years old. Just then, a sound of footsteps came from the side, causing Kakashi to quickly retract his gaze and pretend to look in the direction of the footsteps as if nothing had happened. Then he saw teacher Xia Yan walking over with a smile and said to him, "Kakashi, while there is time now, I will arrange a tutoring plan for you. I hope you can catch up with everyone else during the summer vacation." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 173 Kakashi's Training Arrangements. Seeing that teacher Xia Yan was talking about serious matters, Kakashi also listened carefully. Xia Yan continued, "Since you have already taught yourself the content of this school year, there is actually not much to learn. Only projection technique and radio gymnastics." Kakashi was a little confused when he heard this. He knew projection technique. After all, Obito's fireball projection technique this morning still impressed him, so he was a little looking forward to learning this trick. But what is this radio gymnastics? Although he heard them mention these words just now, Kakashi always felt that he must have heard it wrong. After all, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't connect radio gymnastics with sealing techniques. Could it be that when the sealing technique research group was doing activities, they didn't study sealing techniques, but did radio gymnastics on the rooftop? This is obviously impossible. Seeing Kakashi's confused look, Xia Yan smiled and did not explain. Instead, he turned his head to look at Obito and the others not far away, and changed the subject. "Don't underestimate the clothes they are wearing. Because Obito's strength can make rapid progress in just one semester, and even pose a considerable threat to you, these clothes can be said to be the biggest contributor." Kakashi raised his eyebrows and showed a suspicious look. However, as Xia Yan talked about the role of these tights and radio gymnastics, his eyes opened wider and wider. Meridian Training Method, Action Copy Device, Meridian Scroll, Foundation Building Plan. After listening to Xia Yan's explanation, Kakashi was still mumbling the keywords repeatedly, and his heart was already filled with surprise. He never expected that the battlesuit that looked so fancy and the radio gymnastics that sounded ordinary actually hid so many mysteries. Even now, he finally understood the real reason why Obito was able to switch to Konoha fluid technique so quickly, and his movements were very similar to Kai's. He also understood why Obito's physical fitness improved so quickly, far surpassing himself who had already become a genin. It turned out that this kid was actually cheating. What made him even more scared was that this cheat could be mass-produced. Because he just learned from teacher Xia Yan that this radio gymnastics and tights would be popularized in ninja schools next school year. When a batch of Obitos who have exercised their meridians through radio gymnastics like Obito and copied a set of mass-produced Obitos who were not weak in physical skills graduate, it's a question whether his genius advantage can be maintained. At this moment, he really realized how right it was for Obito to feel sorry for him graduating early in class. He who wanted to graduate early might really be just a big fool. Thinking of this, Kakashi looked at teacher Xia Yan with more respect. If it weren't for teacher Xia Yan considering these graduates and opening up a way for them to continue their studies at school, and inviting him to join the research group, he would have missed this opportunity to become stronger. More importantly, this training method that is enough to support a ninja clan, teacher Xia Yan is actually going to teach it to all students. What kind of spirit is this? Is this the will of fire that the man always talks about? For a moment, Kakashi felt as if he was suffering from presbyopia, and couldn't help but overlap the figure of teacher Xia Yan in front of him and that figure of the man in his mind. He almost blurted out that, fortunately, at this moment, Xia Yan, who had explained to Kakashi the tights and the operation of the broadcast body, began to get to the point, pulling Kakashi back to reality. Because we will be practicing static exercises to expand the meridians by running chakra autonomously next school year, so as the basic dynamic exercises, it is best for you to master radio gymnastics during the summer vacation, otherwise it will delay your future learning progress. On the contrary, there is no need to rush the projection technique. Of course, if you have the spare time, you can learn it together. After seeing Kakashi nod his head after coming back to his senses, Xia Yan smiled again. Then, as I said just now, if you want to learn radio gymnastics, you need to have a training suit, and I just prepared it for you. Kakashi was inexplicably looking forward to it after hearing this. In addition to being able to experience the functions of the training suit mentioned by teacher Xia Yan soon. More importantly, he can have a very legitimate excuse to wear the battle suit that makes him feel childish, but also very greedy. However, he did not show it on the surface, but said calmly, "Since you said so, teacher, I will try it reluctantly." "That's great, I was worried that you might resist it, Kakashi." Xia Yan showed a strange smile and then snapped his fingers. With a bang, the white smoke dissipated. Kakashi looked over with some excitement that he could not suppress, but he found that what the teacher held in his right hand was not the transformed ninja sword he imagined, but a ball of yellow. This was, Kakashi had an inexplicable ominous premonition. Then the next moment he found that his premonition came true. Because the smiling teacher Xia Yan shook his right hand, and after the yellow thing stretched out, he found that it was actually a yellow tights. More importantly, the style of this tights is completely different from that of Obito and the others. It is more like what Kai usually wears. Wait. Seeing the teacher handing over the thing that he was unwilling to admit was clothes, Kakashi took 2 steps back and said in horror, "Teacher, why is the style of my clothes completely different from theirs?" Xia Yan said as if it was a matter of course. "Because they're wearing the special version I rewarded them, and this is the basic version of the training suit. Although I admire you very much, Kakashi, it would be unfair to other students if I just gave you the special version." Kakashi was confused. He now realized that he had misunderstood and thought that the previous training suits were not much different from the battle suits they wore. It turned out to be the opposite. There was a world of difference. No wonder the boys were so ecstatic about getting the battle suits, and the girls did not completely resist. Because this also means that they can get rid of the ugly original version of the training suits from now on. Compared to the training suit in front of him, the uniforms worn by Obito and the others all looked particularly high-end and elegant. Thinking about the fact that he would have to stand next to them wearing such a thing in the future, Kakashi felt that the future was bleak. Although they were all wearing tights, it was like a husky mixed in with a group of wolves. However, Kakashi did not expect that his bad luck was not over yet. Teacher Xia Yan suddenly called out and asked Akai over there to come over. "Teacher, do you have something to talk to me about?" Akai, who was wearing a green ninja uniform, took off his helmet skillfully and asked curiously. Kakashi stared at Akai's uniform sourly. He found that if he looked closer, he could see the difference in the texture of the 2 tights even more. Obviously, Akai is the one who wears this kind of eye-catching tights. Kakashi became more and more speechless. At this time, Xia Yan had finished explaining the matter to Akai, and then said to Kakashi, "Kakashi, Akai has agreed to be your copy of radio gymnastics during the summer vacation and help you learn this set of meridian training methods." Kakashi looked at Akai with a complicated expression, and finally squeezed out a voice. "Thank you. You're welcome. Akai gave a thumbs up and said, Teacher Xia Yan said that the best chess game cannot be played by one person. So if I can make my rival Kakashi stronger, I can also benefit. Kakashi was a little moved by what he said, and his expression relaxed. Who knew that the next moment Akai suddenly looked him up and down with greedy eyes, and added, And I have actually been waiting for this day for a long time. I can't wait to see how your body moves under my influence, Kakashi. Although Kakashi understood what Akai meant, he always felt that there was something wrong with what he said. Sure enough, there is something wrong with this research group. Looking at teacher Xia Yan, who was smiling and holding the yellow tights, Akai, who was looking at him greedily, and the students who were shouting not far away. To be honest, Kakashi couldn't help but think at this time, I wonder if it's too late to quit this research group now. Chapter 174, End of Semester, February 15th, early morning. Xia Yan got up early today, and after breakfast, he slowly walked towards the ninja school. The early cherry blossoms on both sides of the road have quietly bloomed, and the petals of the cherry blossoms are flying in the wind. The faint fragrance of the flowers is refreshing, as if bidding farewell to the students who were about to leave the ninja school. After the graduation exams of the 6th grade students, in the blink of an eye, today is the last day for other students to take final exams. As an elective course, Xia Yan's sealing technique exam is also held on this day. Thinking that after the students finish the exams, he can have a long vacation of 2 months, Xia Yan is in a good mood. And speaking of it, Xia Yan did have full sight at the beginning, and divided all the students into one class. So compared with other elective teachers who need to issue a test paper for each grade, he is much more relaxed, and one test paper is enough. Although when it comes to marking the test papers, he will still have some troubles as he has the most elective students. Fortunately, as the only teacher with an assistant, this is not a big problem for him. As the saying goes, when there is something to do, the assistant teacher will do it, and when there is nothing to do, cough cough. However, as a full-time SEAL teacher, he cannot rely on others to supervise the exam. Since collecting and hiding information are important skills for ninjas, every time the final exam comes, the little ninjas will try to apply these skills in practice and use them in the exam. Therefore, every final exam is a battlefield for students and invigilators to compete in cheating and anti-cheating techniques. Fortunately, Xia Yan does not have to worry too much about this problem. Because this semester, under the incentives of keying cards and various story projections, most students have a very solid grasp of this course and can easily pass the exam without cheating. Of course, more importantly, after these students have experienced the previous midterm exams, they have long known that under the supervision of teacher Xia Yan, they have no possibility of cheating at all. After all, Xia Yan has special invigilation skills. In fact, it is not too difficult to do this. Xia Yan also studied at the ninja school and has long been familiar with everyone's cheating methods. In addition to the common cheating in his previous life, there are also the more ninja-specific methods of obtaining answers by various ninja methods. Xia Yan doesn't care much about the former, because unlike the previous teaching ideas of the sealing technique course that made students memorize by rote, he pays more attention to the various uses of runes. Therefore, most of the test questions he gave were application questions that made Kushina feel like she was dying, and making cheat sheets in advance was not very useful. As for the second cheating method, Xia Yan also has a way to deal with it. After all, the ninja methods used by everyone basically require the use of chakra. Xia Yan, who is proficient in sealing techniques, happens to be an expert in playing with chakra. Originally, he planned to completely block their cheating possibilities by sealing everyone's chakra. But later he thought it was too troublesome, so he thought of a way to simply restrict the use of chakra. That is the rune that was often used to control prisoners in the previous wars between ninja villages. Because with the endless methods of ninjas, it is difficult to keep prisoners under control with simple ropes and chains. The number of ninjas who can completely seal the chakra of the captives is extremely rare, so sometimes people will use a special detonating talisman to restrict the captives. The biggest feature of this detonating talisman is that when it is attached to a person, it can simply detect the flow of chakra in the human body. Once it exceeds a certain threshold or is damaged, it will explode directly. Therefore, the captives who were attached with this detonating talisman cannot use chakra to escape at will. And Xia Yan's way of dealing with it is actually to stick this talisman on the students before the exam. Of course, he still didn't keep the function of the detonating talisman so hardcore, but changed the triggering effect to project a golden exclamation mark on the top of the cheater's head. And it lasted for a week. At first, there were students who didn't believe in evil and tried it themselves. As a result, after a week of being paid special attention by all teachers every day in class, they immediately decided to change their minds and never dare to cheat under the supervision of teacher Xia Yan again. In the morning, at the door of the classroom dedicated to the sealing technique, the students all stretched out their hands helplessly and had a talisman pasted on them by teacher Xia Yan before they entered the classroom. After everyone sat down in the classroom, Xia Yan produced a thick stack of test papers on the podium and said to everyone with a smile, "Then let's get ready to start the exam. By the way, I have made a lot of improvements to this anti-cheating talisman. If you're interested, you can try to see if you can crack it. If you can crack it, you'll get extra points." The little ninjas all looked at teacher Xia Yan with speechless expressions. Teacher Xia Yan really doesn't follow the ordinary path. Other teachers try to stop everyone from cheating, but teacher Xia Yan actually encourages them to cheat, and if they succeed in cheating, they will get extra points. However, this extra point question doesn't seem to be very attractive. After the exam started, Xia Yan sat behind that podium and leisurely took out a book written by a medical ninja, Night Shift Building the 10th, and read it, studying the structure of the human body in depth. But the little ninjas had no intention of cheating. Although this anti-cheating talisman would only detect their chakra flow, it should not be able to prevent them from cheating through primitive methods. But teacher Xia Yan's defenseless appearance made them dare not act rashly. God knows if there are any traps in teacher Xia Yan's improvement of this talisman. After all, they have been with teacher Xia Yan for a semester, and they already know that under his smiling appearance, there is a heart of evil taste. Sure enough, people who play the sealing technique have dirty hearts. Even the reputation of the White Devil has spread from the card world to the ears of students, and gradually became the way they call teacher Xia Yan behind their backs. Judging from teacher Xia Yan's usual style, there must be countless big pits waiting for them. They don't want to have summer vacation, and there is still a big exclamation mark on their heads. Therefore, everyone had to obediently complete the test papers alone, and then they were annoyed by Xiaomin in various application questions. Xia Yan raised his head from time to time, looking at the little ninjas scratching their heads in distress, and his mouth could not help but curl up slightly. In the end, the seal technique exam ended without any trouble, which even made Xia Yan a little regretful. Because in addition to the exclamation mark, he also added a lot of cheating symbols, such as the golden question mark, the red health bar, the mark of only 5 combat power, and the green hat. Unexpectedly, it was completely useless. After completing the invigilation, because of limited time, Xia Yan did not hand over all the grading work to Kushina, and he also graded the papers himself. After grading the papers and calculating the student scores, Xia Yan finally showed a relaxed smile. It seems that there should be no problem with my internship becoming a regular employee. Kushina, who was standing by, couldn't help but roll her eyes when she heard it. Now the school's reform is only halfway through. Let alone the internship becoming a regular employee, I'm afraid that even if Xia Yan wants to leave, Baiwei-sama will not let him leave. In the next 2 days, Xia Yan was busy finishing the work for this semester. Explain the test papers to the students, assign holiday homework, and discuss the curriculum reform for the next semester with the principal of Baiwei-ko, as well as the specific regulations for the cooperation between the pub and the school. On the morning of February 18th, on the playground of the ninja school, the third Okage stood on a high platform, giving a graduation speech to the new genin wearing a brand new forehead protector, instilling a strong wall of fire. The other great students who participated in the ceremony were suffering from splash damage on the side. Although it was a graduation ceremony now, Xia Yan, who was watching the ceremony, always felt that it was no different from the original opening ceremony. Even the position he was standing in was exactly the same as before. It was just that there was a silly-looking Kushina next to him now. And the game he used to kill time now has changed from the original Minesweeper to playing Goban with Kushina in the communication bracelet. Damn, I lost again. I always feel that there seems to be some trick to this game, Kushina said with an unyielding look, as if she had completely forgotten that the graduation ceremony was still going on. As expected, she was soon frightened by Baiwei-ko's murderous gaze and dared not speak. She could only glance at Xia Yan, who looked innocent, with a complaining look. After letting Kushina hone her skills by playing against the machine, Xia Yan looked at the queue of graduates with a complicated mood. Even though he had been in the ninja world for so long, he still couldn't accept it calmly. These children who were just going to junior high school in his previous life would have to work hard for their livelihoods from today, and even go to the battlefield in the near future. Fortunately, with Xia Yan's intervention, their connection with the school was not completely cut off. Almost all graduates, after learning that they could continue to study specific courses in school, chose one or two elective courses without hesitation to continue studying. Of course, the most popular course was Xia Yan's sealing technique class. Many students who had not signed up before because they thought they could only study for 1 year would naturally not miss this opportunity now. However, when the next semester comes, these graduates may have to study sealing technique with the first-year freshmen. Thinking of that scene, Xia Yan felt a little funny. At the same time, since they will not leave the school completely after graduation, the emotions of this year's graduates are particularly stable, and there is no scene of reluctant farewell like previous graduates. This makes many teachers feel a little disappointed. The only thing that is a little abrupt is that among these children, there is a very short figure who makes people around him stay away from him. Xia Yan saw Kakashi's face was stern again, as he did at the beginning of the school, with a look of deep hatred and bitterness, and knew that his previous battle with Obito did not resolve his knot. Of course, this may also be related to the fact that he has been wearing tights and practicing radio gymnastics with Akai these days. In any case, with his current mentality, I'm afraid that he will not be able to get along well with the teachers and friends in the Genin class in the future. After the graduation ceremony, most of the students couldn't help but cheer and celebrate the arrival of the holiday. They even began to chatter about what plans they had for the holiday. And those graduates looked at them with complicated expressions, as if they saw their former selves and felt a little envious. Perhaps their previous graduates also looked at them in the same way. Although they will go back to school to attend classes, the feeling is actually different. In any case, their lives have turned a new page. Their identities have also changed from ninja school students to real Konoha genin. As they become more and more aware of this, no matter they are confused or determined, they unconsciously reach behind their heads and tighten the straps of their forehead protectors. Xia Yan also watched the change in the mentality of these students and ended his first semester as a sealing technique teacher. Chapter 175 Red Bean. After the holiday began, the ninja school lost its former bustle and bustle, becoming exceptionally quiet and empty. A ray of spring sunshine shone in from the skylight of the library, falling right on Xia Yan in front of the bookshelf, warm. At this moment, he had just turned to the last page of the book in his hand, and after a glance with his eyes emitting a deep blue glow, he closed his eyes and the book at the same time. When he opened his eyes again, they had returned to their normal black color. Then Xia Yan exhaled gently, and the dust in the air flew around in the sunlight with his exhalation. This should be the last one. Xia Yan looked at the book in his hand and sighed silently in his heart. After a whole semester, plus almost a week of vacation, he finally included all the books in the ninja school library into his intelligent brain one by one. If he now became a formal seal teacher, he would have the authority to view the seal books that Mito teacher donated to the school. So if he follows his original plan to go back to school, he has now achieved his goal perfectly and can run away at any time. Xia Yan couldn't help but laugh when he thought of this. Because plans can't keep up with changes. When he returned to Konoha to serve as a teacher, he didn't expect so many things to happen in this short semester, which completely disrupted his plan. If you really trace it back to the source, the development of things began to get out of his control, probably from when he met Kushina, who was hung up in the office, and now that he has become Mito's disciple, he can also get in touch with many precious sealing techniques and various related books that he could never imagine before. So now he doesn't need to search for sporadic useful knowledge in the library like panning for gold in the sand like before. Even the sealing technique book in the library that made him particularly envious at the time, he had already read it in Mito's study. There are even annotations written by Mito's teacher on it, which is better than the version in the library. But after some thought, Xia Yan decided to be consistent and collect all the books in the library. He did this not only because of a slight obsessive-compulsive disorder. At the same time, these miscellaneous books donated by different ninja clans, although not as profound as those precious sealing books, are more extensive in terms of the breadth of knowledge. For Xia Yan, who does not intend to follow that path opened up by his predecessors, these knowledge that is like chicken ribs to most people can instead allow him to draw inferences from one instance to another, and combined with his imagination in his previous life, spark a lot of inspiration. Even so many books in this library can no longer fully meet his needs. Therefore, the prototype of the communication bracelet that he will vigorously promote in the future has built-in online library functions. He has roughly planned how to use this online library as a platform to gradually collect all the knowledge of the entire ninja world into it, and continue to become the nutrients for his exploration of the mystery of chakra. Therefore, he has another reason to include all the books in the library. That is, when the time comes, he can fill it into the shared library in the name of the school, and serve as a facade at the beginning. After putting the book back on the shelf, Xia Yan slowly looked around the library, feeling a little emotional. Just like the levels in the game, unless a special plot is triggered, he will probably rarely come here in the future. What made him a little regretful was that he still didn't find out whether the library aunt and the doorman clean were doing something fishy. In addition, because the ninja school has been established for so many years, some of these books have been damaged or lost, which makes his collection a little flawed. Especially the legendary masterpiece Guide to the Evaluation of Beast Girls, the volume of Snape Girls. Xia Yan searched the entire library but couldn't find it, which made him feel uneasy. There was no other meaning. He was always eager to learn, but he just wanted to master a little more posture. No, it was knowledge. With a hint of regret, Xia Yan said goodbye to the aunt in the library and slowly walked out of the library. At the same time, in a remote research institute in Konohagaku, in the dim laboratory, a man with long black hair and a feminine temperament used a syringe to inject a tube of green liquid into a toad, and then began to carefully observe the possible changes in the toad's body. Suddenly, a cautious knock on the door came from outside, which made him frown slightly. "What's the matter?" He continued to stare at the toad and asked in a hoarse voice. Lord Orokimura, the person has been brought." Such a response came from outside the door. Orokimura pondered for a moment before remembering what the other party was talking about, and slowly replied, "Let her in." "Yes." The door of the laboratory was then opened, and the light from the corridor shone in, causing Orokimura's golden vertical pupils to shrink slightly, feeling a little dazzling. "Okay, Red Bean, go in, remember to be obedient." "Yes." A female ninja opened the door and made way. Then, in the corner of Orokimura's slightly narrowed eyes, he saw a little girl who was only 4 or 5 years old, with purple hair and full of energy, walking into the bright corridor. Unlike other girls of the same age, Hondo was not frightened by the gloomy environment. Instead, she looked around with curiosity. Although the laboratory was so dim that it seemed as if there was no money to pay the electricity bill, it was actually well organized. In a corner of the laboratory, a strange uncle with long hair was fiddling with something behind her back. What caught Hondo's attention the most was the row of shelves on the left side of the door, which were filled with various strange and terrifying biological specimens. The only thing they had in common was that they all had some Snape characteristics, as if they were monsters born from the fusion of various creatures and snakes, which was enough to leave a childhood shadow on children who saw this picture. Even Hondo, who was always bold, felt a little scared when she saw these biological specimens. In particular, she saw that one of the hybrid creatures of snakes and cats suddenly turned its pupils towards her. She couldn't help but gasp in fear and took 2 steps back. She subconsciously turned her head to look at the female ninja who brought her here, but the other party looked at her for the last time with a complex look that was not sure whether it was envy or sympathy, then smiled apologetically, closed the door and left. The laboratory became dark again. "I feel like Lord Orokimura is getting more and more scary these days," the kunoichi in the corridor thought to herself, and she unconsciously quickened her pace to leave. And the little red bean, who was still standing at the door of the laboratory, gradually panicked when she heard the footsteps of the female kunoichi leaving outside the door. But she still kept cheering herself up in her heart. Because her mother said that as long as she could become the apprentice of this strange uncle named Orokimura, she would be given red bean soup and meatballs every day. Thinking of this, the little red bean's saliva was about to flow out, and she quickly wiped it with the back of her hand. In fact, Orokimura, who had been observing her with his peripheral vision, was a little surprised. Why would this little girl drool over that shelf of scary specimens? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.